Chapter 2653. Looking at the inexplicably excited Ling Xuanzi, Lin Sun recalled the scene when he first met him. At that time, Ling Xuanzi had just escaped from the core ruins. He was dressed in a green robe and looked like a handsome young man. His black hair was tied behind his head casually. He stretched himself, stretched out his hands, and squinted at the sky. It seemed as if countless years of suppression, countless years of darkness, and suppression had obtained a form of release and venting at this instant. He once said, "Only by standing above the great way and attaining an immortal body can one truly become the master of heaven and the supreme master of all heavens." Unfortunately, before he was suppressed, Ling Xuanzi hadn't walked out of the core mountain and was not famous in the world. The world didn't know that Ling Xuanzi was called the best in the world by the owner of the core mountain. After walking out of the suppression, he admitted defeat in the bet with Lin Sun and took the initiative to enter the Tower of Endless. He had never really revealed his elegance to the world. Until now, Ling Xuanzi seemed to have waited for an opportunity. Lin Sun couldn't understand fourth senior brother's feelings. No one in this world could really empathize with him. He only knew that Ling Xuanzi, who had been suppressed for too long, was eager to fight. Maybe it was to vent, or to show off, or to prove his persistence in the great way. Wine, I want to drink more wine. Next to him, Kong Ju, who was sitting on the ground, raised the empty wine jar and shouted at Lin Sun pitifully. Ling Xuanzi squatted down with a smile and stared at Kong Ju as he said, "Martial uncle, no matter if you're really crazy or just putting on an act, if something happens to little junior brother and I this time, you won't be able to drink such fine wine anymore." Kong Ju's eyes were blank, and he said, "If you don't let me drink, I'd rather die." Ling Xuanzi's eyes were deep, and he said, "You've been in Chaotian City for many years. You said you're waiting for someone to take you home, but you should know that under the cover of Haotian order, no one could do anything to you if you don't want to leave." Kong Ju shouted angrily, "Why don't you give me wine to drink?" Ling Xuanzi continued, "If I'm not wrong, you're waiting for little junior brother, because only the rebirth order in little junior brother can resist the great heaven order and take you away from Chaotian City." Lin Sun couldn't bear to interrupt Ling Xuanzi, but he suddenly remembered something. Back in the nirvana of freedom, Kong Ju had traversed the starry sky to seize the nirvana fortune, but he had been stopped by the will of the master of the core dimension. Lin Sun clearly remembered that Kong Ju once said to him, "Do you want to consider coming with me? No matter which space-time plane you are in, there are very few people who can teach you to reach the peak of immortality and become a venerable. And I am one of them." At that time, Lin Sun didn't know what it meant to reach the peak of immortality and become a venerable. But now that he thought about it, he suddenly realized that if there wasn't something wrong with this martial uncle's mental state, then it was very likely that he was a terrifying existence on the eternal path towards the Tao. Thinking of this, Lin Sun couldn't help but have a strange feeling. Martial Uncle Kong Ju, who had a serious problem with his Taoist heart, had been waiting in Chaotian City all these years. Was he really waiting for Lin Sun? Because only Lin Sun had mastered the nirvana fortune, and according to what his master said, Kong Ju had a problem with his Taoist heart because of his obsession with the Tao of immortality. And Lin Sun had the nirvana order, which was equivalent to having the potential to become an immortal supreme. The Tao of immortality, nirvana of freedom, eternal perdition, lone lotus, this Taoism simply contained too many extraordinary meanings, which made Lin Sun have a new understanding every time he comprehended it over the years. Just like the Tao of immortality, wasn't it related to the nirvana order he had obtained? And he was regarded as the lone lotus. "Wine, I want a drink." Kong Ju's voice was a little sobbing. Lin Sun woke up from his contemplation and saw that the martial uncle, who was regarded as unprecedented and unique, was like a madman. He couldn't help but sigh in his heart, took out a jar of winding water goblet, and handed it over. The latter immediately became ecstatic and drank heartily. "Junior brother, in fact, I'm not sure whether martial uncle is really crazy. But in my opinion, since he is willing to wait in Chaotian City for so many years, He must have made some kind of decision when he was sober. I'm even sure that the person he is waiting for is you, because only you can help him rebuild his Taoist heart. Ling Xuanzi stood up and transmitted his voice. But I have to remind you, don't take the nirvana order to test. Martial Uncle has a problem with his state of mind, so you can't treat it normally at all. Otherwise, if it is taken away by him, you will be completely finished. Lin Sun was stunned for a moment and nodded. Yo, the opponent is here. Is it finally going to start? Ling Xuanzi suddenly looked outside the central immortal court, and a cold light flashed like hunger and thirst in the depths of his clear eyes. Outside the central immortal court, the originally quiet world was suddenly filled with an invisible and terrifying aura, and the void seemed to be frozen. Following that, 4 figures emerged silently. Nan Faidu, with his willow beard and bearing like a god, stood in the void with his hands behind his back. Wisps of the immortal law surrounded him like a divine halo. Gu Lingjun, who was beautiful and dressed in a golden robe, stood at the side. A snow-white flying sword danced between her fair and slender fingers. Li Shangjuan, who was riding a green stallion and holding a purple jade ruler, looked like an immortal. As soon as he appeared, his eyes looked at the central immortal court on the peak of the mountain. Yun Jiawei, who was stepping on a blood-stained scabbard and had gray hair, was covered in a layer of obscure, killing intent. When his eyes opened and closed, they were as sharp as swords, as if they could tear the sky apart. The 4 immortal figures from the 4 Eastern Imperial clans had arrived at this moment. Although they did not reveal their divine power, their appearance made the world seem dim and reduced to a background. The Central Immortal Court is regarded as the supreme place of the last era. It is truly a miracle that it was not destroyed in the destruction of the era, Nanfaidu sighed. He seemed very relaxed, like a tourist paying homage to a historical site. Unfortunately, such a supreme fortune was actually obtained by a disciple of Feng Siyuan. It's simply a waste of gods given gifts. I'll definitely make him obediently spit out the primordial myriad Dao tree after I capture this kid. Gu Lingjun's beautiful eyes were indifferent, and her words were full of undisguised coldness. In addition to the primordial Dao tree, this boy has a lot of good things. I am very interested in the sword cauldron in his hand. It is said that even the power of the immortal can be dissolved. This is not an ordinary treasure. Li Shangjuan, who was riding on a green stallion, said leisurely. This time, being able to enter the gods' ruins ahead of time made them feel particularly relaxed, because they could capture Lin Sun before the great figures of the 8th heaven arrived. This was undoubtedly equivalent to solving a thorny problem for them. As for Lin Sun, no matter how heaven-defying the Zhu Xian Emperor ancestor was, how could he compete with them, who had set foot on the immortal way? Dealing with him was as easy as killing a chicken or a monkey. I want the doppelganger inheritance in his body. It is said that it has the same effect as the Fu family's 4 symbols 9 spirits body. Yun Jiawei also spoke, and her words were as sonorous as a sword. At this moment, a sneer sounded from the central immortal court. Into dreams. Why don't you take a piss and look at yourself? Do you really think that you can do whatever you want with that little bit of cultivation? The voice was full of disdain. Then Fidu frowned. A huge wave of willpower rushed out of his body and swept towards the central immortal court. The nearby void collapsed, as if it couldn't bear the terrifying aura of the willpower. But in just a moment, Nanfaidu let out a muffled groan, and the willpower he released quickly retreated as if it had suffered a heavy blow. A trace of surprise appeared on his face. At the same time, Li Shangjuan, Gu Lingjun, and Yun Jiawei narrowed their eyes and looked at the central immortal court from afar. A handsome figure appeared. His green clothes fluttered in the wind, and his black hair was tied behind his head, revealing a handsome and youthful face. He stood at the peak of the mountain with his hands behind his back and looked down. An indescribable glow flickered in the depths of his eyes. Just the 4 of you? It was a light sentence that seemed to be filled with disappointment. However, the undisguised disdain in the words could be clearly felt by everyone. Who are you? Nanfaidu frowned, but he wasn't angry. Instead, he was surprised because he recognized that the green-clothed young man wasn't Lin's son, whom they were here to capture and kill. Ling Xuanzi smiled and said in a clear voice, "Listen up, I'm the fourth successor of Fengsuan Mountain, Ling Xuanzi." Nan Faidu and the others looked at each other. Ling Xuanzi? I've never heard of him. They knew Mount Innerheart better than anyone else, and they knew some of the successors of Mount Innerheart, such as the first successor, the third successor, Ruosu, and so on. The only person they had never heard of was Ling Xuanzi. As a result, they were slightly startled. The corners of Ling Xuanzi's lips twitched slightly when he saw everything. Then he smiled and said, "I've never heard of you before, but it doesn't matter now. Because from today onward, my name will be spread throughout the world. Seeing me is like seeing the heavens." The last sentence was uttered by him with lofty sentiments. However, the scene was cold. Nan Faidu and the others were sneering with disdain and coldness in their eyes, as if they were listening to a great joke. This made Ling Xuanzi feel terrible. He felt as if his dignity was being silently slandered and attacked. He sighed in his heart. "Master, oh master, if you hadn't suppressed me for so many years, how could these bastards not know my name and not fear my dignity? I don't care who you are, and I don't care which successor of Mount Innerheart you are. Since you dare to get involved in this, only death awaits you." Nan Faidu's eyes were indifferent and filled with dignity. Why waste your breath on a braggart? Just kill him. Yin Zhu seemed to be slightly impatient. He raised his hand and pointed as he spoke. Clang! A crimson sword chi shot out from the blood-stained scabbard beneath his feet. It tore through the sky and slashed at Ling Xuanzi, who was at the peak of the mountain. Chapter 2654. This sword strike was filled with the aura of eternity, and it caused numerous horrifying rifts to appear in the sky. Lin Sun, who was standing in the central immortal court and watching the sword, couldn't help but shrink his black pupils as he felt a strong sense of threat. This was the true power of an undying being. In comparison, the secret treasures that were imprinted with the aura of immortality lacked a unique spirituality. It was a spirituality that belonged to an immortal being's intelligence, will, and killing intent. Naturally, the difference in power was like heaven and earth. At least, Lin Sun knew that if it were him, he would have to use all his strength to operate the abyssal sword cauldron to resist the sword. Facing such a sword, Ling Xuanzi flicked his finger. Bang! The 3000M long red sword chi was instantly cut into two, and it fell from the sky like a dead snake before transforming into a rain of light. Lin Sun couldn't help but be stunned by his casual attitude. But Ling Xuanzi seemed to be very annoyed, and he felt as if he'd suffered a great provocation. A wisp of gloominess suffused his handsome face as he smiled mischievously. What kind of three-legged cat dares to wantonly attack me? Truly preposterous. His voice was like an icy wind that pierced through the sky and covered the heavens and earth, causing the eyelids of Nan Faidu, Gu Lingjin, and the others to twitch. A terrifying might suddenly surged out from Ling Xuanzi's body, and the countless apertures on his body absorbed the laws of the Grand Tao. Azure light flowed like water, and numerous translucent eternal flowers that were translucent like glass condensed. Boundless divine radiance enveloped his body, causing every single move he made to carry boundless might. Looking from afar, it was as if a deity had descended upon the world, his might shaking the heavens. Undying, Nan Faidu and others were shocked. Before they came here, they didn't expect that Lin Sun had such a backer. Things were getting a little tricky. They looked at each other and frowned. If he wanted to kill Lin Sun, it would be as easy as blowing off dust. But if he wanted to kill an undying person, he would have to use some methods. We can't delay any longer. Let's end this quickly. Yun Jue made a prompt decision. The blood-stained scabbard beneath his feet buzzed as he shot up into the sky. As he stood still, the billowing murderous aura turned into the power of black thunder and condensed into a divine halo that appeared behind his head. The divine halo was filled with a terrifying torrent of the great path. It was formed by the immortal laws. Whoosh! Yunjiu slashed with his finger, and black lightning gathered, turning into a buzzing divine sword that shone with an indestructible luster as it slashed towards Ling Xuanzi. Lin Sun felt a stinging pain in his eyes. His body and mind were greatly frightened, and his hair stood on end. This sword was more than twice as powerful as the previous one. It was beyond Lin's imagination and had completely exceeded the scope of Lin's cognition. In the face of such a sword, Lin Sun didn't have the slightest confidence to withstand it, because the level of power was too high. Junior brother, you've just ended your woo and become an ancestor, so you don't understand the power of the immortal realm. Right now, I'm going to borrow the lives of these old bastards to explain it to you. Amidst the cold laughter, Ling Xuanzi stood still on the spot. Only his right hand suddenly reached out, grabbed, and retracted. Boom! In the sound of an explosion, the black sword chi was grasped by Ling Xuanzi across the air like a huge dragon, and then it exploded into a rain of black lightning. This old bastard has grasped the immortal law from the 9th grade of heaven rank, and its power is far above the earth rank. This also means that in a head-on battle, ordinary people in the same realm are no match for this old bastard at all. Ling Xuanzi explained to Lin Sun as if he was teaching him homework. At this point, Lin Sun finally understood and remembered some rumors. The immortal path was divided into 3 major realms. Same lifespan, nirvana, and transcendent. But no matter which realm the immortals were in, there was a huge difference in strength between them. The core was that the power of the immortal law they grasped was different. The power of the immortal law corresponded to the division of the order power, because the immortal law was originally comprehended from the order power. For example, the immortal law of the 1st grade of heaven rank was comprehended from the order power of the 1st grade of heaven rank. In the same lifespan realm, an immortal who grasped the immortal law of the 1st grade of heaven rank could definitely suppress an opponent who grasped the immortal law of the 9th grade of earth rank. In the eternal world, those who could grasp the immortal law of the 9th grade of heaven rank were undoubtedly the top existences in the same realm. Yin Jiwei, for example, was obviously such a terrifying figure. It was also at this time that Lin Sun finally understood why he felt so helpless when facing that sword. The reason was that the immortal law that the other party grasped on the immortal path was far superior to that of ordinary immortals. After all, Yun Jiwei came from one of the top forces in the 7th heaven, and the order power he grasped was at the 9th grade of heaven rank. How could it be ordinary? After understanding this, Lin Sun's state of mind suddenly became calm. The gap was too big, and there was nothing to be unsatisfied about. The only thing that surprised Lin Sun was that in the face of such an opponent, 4th senior brother was not afraid at all. This completely exceeded his understanding. In the past, he subconsciously thought that 4th senior brother would be in existence on the same level as eldest senior brother and 2nd senior brother. But now it seemed that 4th senior brother was obviously an anomaly among the descendants of Fengsuan Mountain. Ling Xuanzi's disrespectful attitude caused Yun Jiwei to frown, and he didn't hesitate to withdraw his immortal Dao weapon. It was a sword that was fiery red, as if it was burning, and it was filled with an immortal aura. As soon as it appeared, heaven and earth seemed to be incinerated and drowned by endless flames. However, Ling Xuanzi turned a blind eye to it and said, "This old bastard is at the mid-stage of the longevity realm, and his immortal Dao weapon is extraordinary, but it's only at the earth rank. If I'm not wrong, this old bastard should be a poor bastard who isn't doing well, and he doesn't have the ability to gather first-rate immortal materials. Otherwise, why would he carry an earth-rank immortal Dao weapon and embarrass himself?" The word poor bastard was like a knife that stabbed into Yun Jiwei's heart, causing him to be unable to restrain himself any longer, and he slashed with his sword. Boom! Along with this slash, the sky completely collapsed, and the void rumbled and collapsed. Waves of immortal aura were released from the sword, and it simply seemed as if it wanted to destroy this world. Ling Xuanzi withdrew the 3,000 floating sinks, and the snow-white horsetail whisk transformed into a silver waterfall that swept through the void. The fiery sword chi that covered the sky collapsed and vanished like bubbles. Yun Jiuwei's pupils constricted abruptly, and he finally realized that this fellow who claimed to be the fourth successor of Mind Formula was far more difficult to deal with than he had imagined. Although Master's 3,000 floating sinks is seriously damaged, it's still a treasure personally refined by Master. How can it be compared to an embarrassing immortal Dao weapon? Little junior brother, this treasure has been covered in dust in your hands all these years. Ling Xuanzi couldn't help but let out a long sigh in the end. In the distance, Lin Sun had a strange expression in his eyes, and he remained silent. In fact, he was stunned by Ling Xuanzi's unparalleled style. How could an ordinary person compare to him when facing a great enemy? Yet he still spoke with confidence and composure in a carefree manner. Roar! With a deafening roar, the handsome green mantis rose into the sky with Li Shangjuan on its back. Holding the purple jade ruler in one hand, he said with a blank expression, "If the Master of Mind Formula is really as powerful as you say, why is he hiding like a turtle and not daring to show his face in the eternal world?" There was a hint of sarcasm in his voice. Ling Xuanzi's face suddenly darkened, and as if he was rarely angered, his eyes burst out with a frightening cold light and killing intent. He said, "For this alone, I can't let you leave alive." Boom! His green robe fluttered, and the 3,000 floating sinks in his palm suddenly swept out. A long river formed by silver divine light enveloped Li Shangjuan. Li Shangjuan struck out with the purple jade ruler, and the sky was suddenly filled with purple mist. The immortal totem of dragons and tigers, Yin and Yang, appeared. This strike was indeed mysterious and unpredictable. The immortal laws and power it used were far beyond Lin Sun's comprehension at the moment. But it was precisely this attack that was instantly blasted into pieces when it went against the 3,000 ups and downs, and it was as weak as a piece of paper. Li Shangjuan was fine under the impact, but the green mantis under him suffered. It was hit by the silver rain of light that filled the sky. Its skin was torn, and its bones were broken. It let out a shrill cry and almost flung Li Shangjuan away. Li Shangjuan flew into the sky in exasperation and put away the green mantis. With a livid face, he said, "How dare you hurt my bull? You're asking for death." He activated the purple jade ruler and charged through the sky. His entire body was bathed in the purple rain of immortal light, and he looked like a god who was angry, causing the world to wail. At the same time, Yun Jiuwei also attacked. She controlled the brilliant red divine sword and swung out a sword chi that blotted out the sky. It was like a cloud of fire that burned the 9 heavens. "Oomph, you're just an ant trying to shake a tree." As he spoke, Ling Xuanzi flashed up while numerous azure-colored eternal Dao flowers that seemed like glass bloomed all over his body, and his imposing aura shot through the world. Along with him swinging the 3,000 upheavals, boundless silver-colored profound light surged into appearance. Everywhere it passed, the sword chi that seemed like it was burning was crushed into pieces, the brilliant violet rain of light was crushed into powder, and it swept through everything like a hot knife through butter. It was also at this moment that Ling Xuanzi, who'd suppressed himself for countless years and endured the boundless torment of darkness, had completely revealed his might to the world. In the blink of an eye, both sides had fought intensely for a few dozen rounds, and it caused this expanse of the heavens and the earth to collapse completely, while everything in the world showed signs of collapse and destruction. Even the central immortal court at the peak of the mountain was affected. It rumbled and shook violently, while numerous cracks appeared on its surface, and it seemed to be on the verge of collapse. Obviously, this supreme place that had survived since the last era was bound to fall and be unable to protect it. Bang! Amidst rumbling that shook the heavens and the earth, 2 figures shot out. Shockingly, it was Yun Jiuwei and Li Shangjuan. They were shaken to the point their figures staggered back, their clothes were disheveled, and their vital blood roiled. On the other hand, Ling Xuanzi's green clothes fluttered while he held a horsetail whisk in his hand, and he seemed like a supreme god. Yun Jiawei and Li Shangjuan's eyes were filled with seriousness, surprise, and bewilderment. They seemed to have never imagined that under their joint attack, they would actually be suppressed and pushed back by Ling Xuanzi alone. When did Mount Hart have such a heaven-defying disciple? P.S. I didn't stop updating on the first day of my business trip. Chapter 2655. Lin Sun couldn't help but gape. Fourth senior brother had been suppressed in the core ruins for eons. How could he still be so strong? Didn't they say that the path to immortality was severed after the forbidden power of order covered the ancient path? But soon, Lin Sun realized that there was a deviation in his cognition. Fourth senior brother was suppressed in the primordial era. His cultivation might have reached the immortal level before the forbidden power covered the universe. If that was the case, then fourth senior brother's talent was too monstrous. Junior brother, do you see that? These two old bastards are both in the middle stage of the heavenly longevity realm. In fact, it's almost impossible for them to improve further given their age. Ling Xuanzi spoke leisurely as if he was a god giving orders. He held the 3,000 floating sinks in his hand. When he attacked, he was as graceful as an immortal. But the power he unleashed with every move made Yun Jiawei and Li Shangjuan, the two immortals, almost unable to lift their heads. Boom! The world was turned upside down. The light of the Tao of immortality swept out. The entire world seemed to be collapsing and was about to be destroyed. Kill! Yun Jiawei's expression was gloomy and unsightly while he attacked with his sword in hand. The divine sword that blazed like a ray of fire surged out with boundless rivers of flames, and all of them were formed from the eternal laws, causing them to be peerlessly terrifying. Even sovereign ancestor Juexian's soul would be destroyed if he came into contact with even a hint of it. That was the aura of a ninth-rank heaven-ranked immortal. It was unimaginably powerful. Go! Ling Xuanzi waved his horsetail whisk and chanted. His voice resounded through the 9 heavens. Boom! Amidst the rumbling that shook the heavens and the earth, the bright red divine sword was destroyed, and Yun Jiawei was even shaken to the point of coughing up blood. His figure staggered back, and his face turned ghastly pale. On the other side, Li Shangjuan's purple jade ruler was also wailing. It was suppressed by Ling Xuanzi's divine presence and couldn't get close. He was just one person, but he was able to suppress 2 immortals. One had to know that both of them were at the peak of the heavenly longevity realm. In the eternal world, people like them who wielded the laws of immortality were called the heaven immortals of the heavenly longevity realm. Those who wielded the laws of immortality were naturally the earth immortals. The power they wielded was far from being able to fight against the heaven immortals. Rumble. Amidst the intense battle, Ling Xuanzi seemed as if he was taking a stroll in the courtyard. He waved his horsetail whisk and silver light flowed, crushing the sky, causing Yun Jiawei and Li Shangjuan to be injured continuously. Nan Faidu and Gu Lingjin, who hadn't made a move yet didn't dare to hesitate when they saw this. They activated their cultivation and charged into the sky. Huh! Nan Faidu shouted loudly as a dark green spear flashed out from the top of his head. Its sharpness was restrained, yet it was suffused with a ferocious aura of slaughter that could terrify even ghosts and gods. Clang! At the same time, the snow-white flying sword shot out from Gu Lingjin's palm and gently rotated in the void, scattering ripple-like waves of sword chi. Each wave was like a world of swordsmanship, and the layers of the waves spread out like layers of swordsmanship worlds. Such a scene could be said to be world-shocking. One is still one. So what if there are 2 more? Ling Xuanzi's eyes glowed brilliantly as he stepped through the air like a god patrolling, and his snow-white horsetail whisk transformed into boundless resplendent beams of light that shot out. Bang! The dark green spear buzzed as it was struck by the peerlessly mighty force, and it shook Nan Faidu to the point his blood and chi roiled, causing his expression to change. On the other side, The ripple-like worlds of swordsmanship shattered amidst the explosion and were crushed by the white silver torrent. Even Gu Lingjin couldn't help but reveal an expression of disbelief. It should be known that the four of them possessed ninth-grade heaven-rank immortal laws. Even though they were at the heavenly longevity realm, it was absolutely not difficult for them to crush ordinary immortals. However, at this moment, even if they joined forces, they still weren't able to suppress the opponent's arrogance. So how terrifying was his cultivation? Kill. The four of them glanced at each other and didn't hesitate to use their strongest techniques. Bang! The might of the immortals blotted out the sky and swept out in all directions. All sorts of miraculous and unbelievable techniques were mixed between the spear, divine sword, jade ruler, and flying sword, causing this expanse of heaven and earth to be thrown into disorder and everything to collapse. Lin Sun's expression changed, and he didn't dare to continue watching the battle. "Senior uncle, let's go out." He helped up Kong Ju, who was drinking wildly, and flashed out of the central immortal court. This place was on the verge of collapse, and they couldn't stay here any longer. Buzz! At the same time, the abyssal sword cauldron floated up and down, sprinkling billions of rays of light that protected him and Kong Ju. But even so, they still felt like they were in a storm. The aftermath of the battle was everywhere, and the aura of the immortals kept rushing over, causing the abyssal sword cauldron to shake violently, putting Lin Sun under great pressure. The fluctuations of the battle could easily destroy a part of the universe and collapse a world. If it wasn't for the abyssal sword cauldron, Lin Sun couldn't help but wonder if he could withstand it with his cultivation. Ling Xuanzi's clear laughter came from the intense battle. "Little junior brother, calm down and experience the power of the immortal realm. It will be greatly beneficial to your future cultivation. Of course, if you can't hold on, you just need to say a word, and I'll kill these four old bastards." The faces of Nan Faidu and the others darkened and became even more unsightly. From the beginning, Ling Xuanzi had treated them like trash and recklessly criticized them. As immortals, when had they ever been treated like this? Kill. Their attacks became more and more ferocious. Their divine might was vast and mighty, causing the world to collapse and all things to be destroyed. Although the power of every attack was directed at Ling Xuanzi alone, Lin Sun, who suffered the impact of the aftermath of the battle, was in great pain. The abyssal sword cauldron rumbled and was pushed to the limit by him. But as the aftermath of the battle swept out, it was like huge waves slamming onto Lin Sun's body, causing his blood and qi to churn and his body to sway, as if he was drunk. One should know that he was an exalted emperor ancestor. When he was fighting Qi Lingyun and the others, he was invincible and no one dared to claim supremacy. But now, just the aftermath of the battle was almost too much for him to bear. At the end of the day, the disparity in strength was too great. Nan Faidu and the other three immortals were peak existences who wielded the ninth-grade immortal laws of heaven after all. It was already a miracle that Lin Sun could endure the aftermath of the battle until now. If it was anyone else, their soul would have been destroyed by now. Boom! Suddenly, the heavens and the earth were completely destroyed. The towering mountain collapsed, and the central immortal court that stood towering above it collapsed along with it. The energy of the laws that covered the entire god's ruin exploded and transformed into a boundless torrent of laws that spread out. It was like the world had been turned upside down. Swoosh! At this instant, Ling Xuanzi, who was fighting the four immortals, flashed and arrived by Lin Sun's side. He grabbed Lin Sun's arm and tore space apart before charging into the sky. "Where do you think you're going?" Nan Faidu and the others roared and teleported. They were like four rays of divine light as they chased after Ling Xuanzi. Boom! An earth-shattering tremor resounded in the starry sky. The cultivators who had been waiting outside the god's ruin were shocked to the point that their bodies trembled, and then they looked towards the source of the sound. At this moment, the ruins of the gods that were like the wings of a butterfly actually seemed as if they'd been struck, and they started to collapse. The entire expanse of the starry sky rumbled violently, while peerless, chaotic flows of energy and meteors shot towards the surroundings, and it seemed like an area of the starry sky had been thrown into complete disorder. "Retreat!" Exclamations resounded, and the cultivators nearby instinctively fled far away. The destructive force was too terrifying, and it wasn't something they could resist. "Look over there." At the same time, everyone noticed that numerous seemingly eternal and dazzling rays of light had charged out from within the ruins of the gods, and they were like numerous gods that emanated monstrous might as they fought intensely. There was no doubt that the destruction of the gods' ruin was caused by this Tao battle of the immortals. It was terrifying. No one had expected that such a shocking battle would occur before the gods' ruin had truly come to an end. Moreover, they even destroyed the gods' ruin. It's the four immortals of the four Eastern imperial families. But who's fighting him? Many recognized Nanfaidu, Gulingzhin, and the others, but couldn't recognize the silhouette fighting the four undying beings, or who it was. But there was no doubt that the other party was very strong. One person was able to stop the attacks of four undying beings. That kind of horrifying power shocked everyone. It was unbelievable. "Look, Vicious Lin is here too." A surprised voice rang out. Only then did people notice that in the battlefield, a tall figure was protected by the green-clothed man. The sword cauldron above his head floated up and down. It was Lin's son. Where did Vicious Lin find such a powerful backer? Many people found it hard to believe. Previously, the scene of Nanfaidu and the other three entering the god's ruin was witnessed by everyone. They all knew that Lin's son was most likely going to be in trouble. But what happened now completely overturned their previous conjecture. Even if they racked their brains, they would never have thought that Lin's son, who was all alone, had such a great figure at the immortal level protecting him. No wonder he dared to be so arrogant. "It turns out that he has something to rely on," someone whispered. "It's just that Lin's son didn't just offend the four Eastern imperial families. He also offended the immortals of the eighth heaven. Under such circumstances, who would dare to risk universal condemnation to protect Lin's son? Aren't they afraid of death?" Many people were bewildered. On the battlefield, Ling Xuanzi was fighting fiercely with Nanfaidu and the others. He was confident and composed. The 3,000 floating sinks in his hands erupted with unprecedented power. However, Lin's son, who was protected by Ling Xuanzi, was very passive. He was like a straw tied to the battlefield, helpless and uncomfortable. The level of power displayed in this battle had completely exceeded his understanding. He didn't dare to release his divine sense to sense it. He could only passively be protected by Ling Xuanzi and constantly resist the impact of the aftermath of the battle. The situation was extremely torturous. In the end, Lin Sun couldn't help but say, "Fourth senior brother, have you played enough? Do you really think I can't see that you're using this opportunity to beat me up?" Ling Xuanzi, who was fighting fiercely, had a strange look in his eyes. He couldn't help but smile, but he said seriously, "Junior brother, I'm helping you comprehend the mysteries of the immortal level. You can't measure the heart of a gentleman with your own mean measure." Chapter 2656. Back in the Central Immortal Court, Lin Sun had noticed that fourth senior brother Ling Xuanzi had the upper hand against the four undying figures. Although Lin Sun couldn't understand the power of the immortal realm, he still had his battle experience. How could he not know that if he had tried his best, this battle would have been over already? But the battle did not continue. Although Ling Xuanzi said that he wanted to use this battle to give Lin Sun some pointers and let him feel the power of the immortal realm, Lin Sun couldn't help but suspect if his fourth senior brother was also using this opportunity to teach him a lesson. If that was the case, Lin Sun would endure it. After all, he had schemed against Ling Xuanzi once before. But the crux of the matter was that they'd fought their way into the universe now. Without the concealment of the ruins of the gods, everything would be exposed before the eyes of all the cultivators in the surroundings. If some ruthless characters were to appear at this moment, it would only make the situation even more uncontrollable. Ling Xuanzi also seemed to realize that Lin was in a bad mood, so he immediately said with a smile, Well, I'll help you get rid of the enemy now." Then he glanced at Nan Fidu and the other three with eyes as sharp as lightning. "Everyone, it's time to end this farce. My little junior brother no longer has the patience to listen to my guidance. There's no other way. I, Ling Xuanzi, can only send all of you on your way." His voice was like the morning bell, and it resounded through this expanse of the universe. The spectators in the distance were all astonished. Little junior brother? Vicious Lin actually had a sect behind him? If his senior brother was an immortal realm existence, then his teacher, how strong was he? This news was like a hurricane, wreaking havoc in the hearts of the people, causing an uproar and restlessness. Only Gu Banzwang, Yin Luohong, and the other members of the four Dongwon clans were the calmest, because they already knew that Lin Sun's master was Mount Innerheart. However, even they did not expect that Ling Xuanzi, the successor of Feng Siyuan, who was so terrifying that he could fight against four immortals, would appear at this moment. This was completely beyond their expectations. Boom! Right when everyone was surprised and bewildered, Ling Xuanzi's aura changed abruptly in the distant battlefield. His figure that was originally handsome like a young man actually surged with an extremely great dignified aura. Crash, strands of green light condensed and transformed into a 36 peak-ranked green lotus platform. It glowed brilliantly in the universe, and it revealed boundless profound scenes. Ling Xuanzi stood on it with a horsetail whisk in one hand and the Tower of Infinity in the other. He was like a god that stood above the 9 heavens, giving off an unreachable and majestic feeling. At this moment, Nan Fidu and the others, whose eyes were bloodshot from the intense battle, felt a chill run down their spines. Their expressions changed slightly as they realized that something was wrong, because Ling Xuanzi seemed as if he'd become a completely different person, and the aura he emanated caused them to feel a bone-piercing sense of danger. "I'm afraid he's going to die if he continues to hide." Nan Fidu's face was dark as water. "Then let's use our trump cards and kill this fiend," Yun Jio said. As he spoke, he flicked his sleeve, causing a gorgeous divine ray of light to flash up and transform in midair before transforming into a 5-colored flying knife that glowed brilliantly and flowed with the radiance of the 5 elements. Strands of dazzling order energy gushed out from the tip of the flying dagger. Merely the aura it released caused the starry sky to tremble, and countless cracks appeared in the nearby space. It was a ghastly sight. 5 essence spirit severing saber. The secret treasure was imprinted with the aura of order and contained the essence of the 5 elements. Although it seemed to be the size of a palm, a simple strike from it could tear apart the power of rules that covered an entire world. It was truly terrifying. "Kill!" Yun Jiawei shouted loudly as the 5-colored flying dagger shot out explosively. When looked at from afar, it was like a ray of light that tore apart the universe, and it emanated an all-powerful might. The cultivators in the distance felt a piercing pain in their eyes while their minds were terrified. Even if they were extremely far away, they still felt terror as if a sharp blade was pressed against their throats. However, a scene that made one's scalp numb appeared. The 5-colored flying dagger had just arrived before the 36-rank azure lotus platform when it was obstructed by numerous azure petals that seemed like a rain of light, and it was confined there. No matter how it struggled, it was unable to escape. Ling Xuanzi stretched out his hand and made a grabbing motion, causing the 5-colored flying dagger to fall into his palm. With a light flick of his fingers, this treasure that Yun Jiawei regarded as her trump card collapsed inch by inch, transforming into a rain of light that drifted through the gaps between Ling Xuanzi's fingers. Puff! The destruction of his treasure caused Yun Jiawei to be affected as well, and he suddenly coughed up a mouthful of blood while his expression changed drastically, and his eyes were filled with astonishment. "Go!" In the distance, Ling Xuanzi raised his hand, and the Tower of Endless soared into the sky before vanishing into thin air. Before everyone could recover from their shock, A muffled bang resounded as the Tower of Endless actually appeared in the sky above Yunjiawei and crushed down. The ancient tower that seemed as if it was constructed from divine gold emanated a dazzling torrent of the Grand Tao, and it enveloped Yun Jiawei's body. It wasn't that Yun Jiawei didn't want to dodge, but the nearby space had been sealed like a cage of the Grand Tao, and it was utterly impossible for him to move. His eyes opened wide with rage as he circulated his eternal Tao to the limit. Yet he was actually unable to struggle free, and he could only watch helplessly as the Tower of Endless crushed down. Subsequently, a wave of rumbling that shook the heavens resounded as Yun Jiawei's head, neck, chest were crushed and obliterated piece by piece. Only a rain of light that covered the sky remained, and the seemingly eternal Tower of Endless floated there silently. An eternal almighty expert that possessed a ninth-grade heaven rank laws was crushed with a single strike. The bloody scene caused everyone in the distance to tremble, and they stood there dumbfounded and in disbelief. Even Lin Sun didn't expect the Tower of Endless, a treasure that had accompanied him since he was young, to possess such unbelievable power. So much so that he couldn't help but gasp when he witnessed this scene. This was an absolute suppression in terms of power, and it didn't allow the opponent to escape at all. A single strike had destroyed both his body and soul. On the battlefield, Yun Jiawei's death was a great shock to Nan Faidu and the others. Their expressions changed drastically, and their bodies stiffened. Yun Jiawei's combat strength wasn't any weaker than any of them, yet he was killed just like that. How could they not be shocked? Go! Ling Xuanzi chanted as if he was the ruler on the 36th grade Green Lotus platform. Boom! The Tower of Endless disappeared into thin air once again. Nan Faidu, Gu Lingjin, and Li Shangjuan were scared out of their wits. They dodged at the first possible moment and exerted all of their life-saving trump cards at the same time. However, Nan Faidu's dodging figure suddenly froze as if he was grabbed by a giant hand. Then, the Tower of Endless appeared above his head, and millions of dazzling divine radiance poured down like a waterfall. Open. At this critical moment, the 6 divine swords appeared behind Nan Faidu. They clanked and turned into the 6 harmonies sword diagram, surging with the mysterious light of immortality. This was his trump card, called the 6 harmonies void slaughtering sword formation. It was tempered by 6 different order energies and contained a surging aura of immortality. He wouldn't use it unless it was a matter of life and death, but he couldn't care less at the moment. However, Ling Xuanzi showed a hint of disdain when he saw this scene from afar. The Tower of Endless was the natal treasure of his master, the master of the heart core. How could anyone resist its power? Then boom! As the Tower of Endless pressed down, the 6 harmonies void slaughtering sword formation that had just appeared immediately exploded as if it was hit by a giant hammer. The 6 divine swords all shattered. Nanfaida's eyes were filled with despair. Even this could not be stopped. In the next moment, he turned into a mist of blood and was crushed. His body and soul were obliterated by the endless light of Tao, vanishing without a trace. The second immortal cultivator had fallen. In the distance, everyone's limbs turned cold and their minds went blank. Immortal cultivators were like legends to them. They were known as almighty cultivators who lived as long as the heavens and were immortal in the world. It was a level that every martial emperor dreamt of reaching. But now, 2 immortal cultivators from the 4 Eastern Imperial clans had fallen. The bloody and cruel scene was like a bolt of lightning that struck everyone's heart. Let's go! Li Shangjuan was completely terrified. He immediately steered the violet jade boat and tore through the void to escape. The violet jade boat was obviously a secret treasure for escaping. It possessed unimaginable power and could break through the barrier of the world. Condense. Ling Xuanzi waved his horsetail whisk. Silver light filled the sky and turned into a mysterious and obscure Tao path. It covered an area of 100,000 meters, and the totem of a crescent moon and 3 stars appeared within it. In just an instant, Li Shangjuan and the violet jade boat beneath him seemed to have fallen into a swamp. The area was covered by the Dao path in all directions. Just like the Forbidden Zone, he had nowhere to run and nowhere to hide. Ling Xuanzi, aren't you afraid that your Fengsuan mountain will be destroyed? Li Shangjuan yelled. His face was ashen, and his eyes were filled with rage and terror. Ling Xuanzi did not answer. Boom! An earth-shattering explosion resounded in the distance. Li Shangjuan swiftly turned around, and only now did he notice that Gu Lingjin, who'd fled towards another direction at the same time he was trapped, had actually followed in the footsteps of Nan Faidu and Yun Jiawei. Her body had been shattered by the pagoda, and her soul dispersed. The third immortal cultivator had fallen just like that. In an instant, Li Shangjuan was stunned. He felt as if the sky had collapsed. Ever since he set foot on the immortal path, this was the first time he had felt such terror, despair, and helplessness. Ling Xuanzi, this isn't your power. Li Shangjuan seemed to have understood. He looked at Ling Xuanzi with anger in his eyes. It's not too late for you to understand. Today, I'm acting on behalf of Master. If I don't kill you, I'll be letting down the 2 treasures left behind by Master. Ling Xuanzi said indifferently. Seeing his actions, Lin Sun wanted to say something. For senior brother, you're just a guy who was suppressed by Master. What right do you have to act on behalf of Master? But in the end, he held back. He had no choice. The Tower of Ceaseless and the 3,000 floating and sinking couldn't unleash such power in his hands. He could only let Ling Xuanzi unleash his power. Boom! An earth-shattering roar resounded. The Tower of Ceaseless was activated again. It appeared above Li Shangjuan's head and released a myriad of rays of light. Li Shangjuan sighed, his eyes full of bitterness. It was originally an operation to capture and kill Lin Sun, but in the end, he lost his life. The world was unpredictable. In the next moment, his body was killed. It evaporated in the boundless Taoist light and disappeared completely. At this point, all 4 immortal cultivators had fallen. They were killed cleanly. Everyone was silent. The crowd was shocked. Chapter 26:57. In the vast universe, the destructive torrent was still rolling and spreading, but the people in the distance looked as if they had lost their souls and stood there in a daze. 4 immortal realm experts from the top forces of the 7th heaven were smashed to death by that pagoda one after another. It should be known that those who could still stand in this universe and watch the battle were almost all-powerful existences in the Emperor realm. However, in the face of such a bloody scene, they could not help but shiver and feel their scalps go numb. It was too terrifying. Feng Sun's successor, Ling Xuanzi, stood on the 36 green lotus platform, holding a horsetail whisk and holding a pagoda, just like a legendary deity. Who would have thought of this before? In the hearts of everyone, Nan Faidu and the others were supreme overlords that they could look up to. Yet now, they've been killed successively in this cold and silent universe. The impact of this was too great, and anyone who witnessed this scene would probably be shocked to the point their jaws hit the ground and feel terrified. Uncle, I've seen him before. He once attacked in the Tai ruins and beat up evil god Tishi. Xiang Xiaoyuan transmitted her voice, her clear eyes filled with excitement and worship. He is Lin Sun's senior brother. He is simply omnipotent and invincible. Lu Xiangque could not help but be shocked. A few years ago, I heard that a group of Feng Sun's successors arrived in the eternal true world and killed their way to the 6th heaven in just a short 9 days. But I did not expect Feng Xiyuan's successor to be so terrifying. Ling Xuanzi's elegant demeanor of killing 4 immortal realm experts in the blink of an eye was too dazzling. Even Lu Xiangque was shocked and filled with admiration. How could this be? This is impossible. This is impossible. On the side of the 4 Eastern Imperial clans, Gu Banzwang, Yin Luohong, and the others were in a daze. They suffered a heavy blow and were about to collapse. Even among the immortal Emperor clans, the number of immortal realm experts was limited. Yet now, every single clan had lost one of their own. How could they accept this? The universe was in an uproar and fell in a great shock. This battle also made everyone remember Ling Xuanzi deeply. No one would forget that there was such a peerless almighty among the successors of Fong Cun Mountain. On the battlefield, a green Tao light circulated with an immortal luster. Ling Xuanzi's eyes were filled with longing as he licked his lips. Junior brother, do you think my battle strength can kill undying beings like killing chickens? He said slowly. The battle was over. Lin Sun, who had fallen into a passive position, finally recovered from the painful impact and felt relaxed all over. When he heard Ling Xuanzi's words, he said angrily, since it's so easy to kill them, then why did it take so long? Don't tell me it's to let me feel the power of the immortal realm. At his current realm, even if he could sense the power of the immortal realm, it would be like looking at a flower in the mist. He wouldn't be able to comprehend anything. Ling Xuanzi smiled. You can't wrongly accuse a good person. Cut the crap. Let's go. Lin Sun's black eyes glanced around, and he didn't look relaxed. Even though the eternal figures from the 4 Eastern Imperial clans had been eliminated, who could be sure that there weren't even more terrifying opponents hidden in this vast universe? We can't leave. Ling Xuanzi's smile disappeared. His eyes were deep as he stared into the distance and said softly, the 4 just now were just appetizers. The main show will come next. His deep voice caused Lin Sun's heart to tremble. He quickly asked via voice transmission, can we kill our way into Chaotian City first? Ling Xuanzi was stunned. He seemed to have guessed what Lin Sun wanted to do and said thoughtfully, we can give it a try. He waved his sleeve and put away the 36 green lotus seat. He raised his hand and tore the void, wanting to leave with Lin Sun and Kong Ju. At this moment, a streak of purple sword chi flickered, tearing through the endless void as it slashed over at an incomparably fast speed. You really can't hold it in anymore? Ling Xuanzi raised his brows and waved the 3,000 floating and sinking. With a loud explosion, the purple sword chi collapsed and dissipated. Why do I need to hold it in against the evil creatures of Mount Heart? Boom! In this universe, a purple beam of light suddenly appeared and shot towards Zhou Su, illuminating the heavens. Following that, a figure appeared. It was a man wearing an imperial crown and a black robe. When his eyes opened and closed, the scene of the universe collapsing and sinking appeared. It was extremely shocking. Along with his appearance, the monstrous immortal light seemed to cover the heavens and earth, covering the sky, causing the bodies of the people in the distance to stiffen and become unstable. It was like a subject seeing a king, and they couldn't help but feel awe. Qi Tianlin, an immortal of the Qi clan in the 8th heaven. The people in the distance were restless. It was as if they saw a legendary god descending to the world. Everyone revealed a look of disbelief. It was said that in the 8th heaven, Qi Tianlin could also be called a giant, and his might could suppress all realms. At the same time, Ling Xuanzi's pupils also narrowed, and he said via voice transmission, Junior brother, this old thing has a nirvana god cultivation base. He's a tough one. When the battle starts later, remember to bring martial uncle. Leave the rest to me. There was a hint of solemnity in his voice. Lin Sun's heart was in turmoil. Previously, Nan Faidu, Gu Lingjin, and the others were all at the first level of the immortal realm, and they were already so powerful. Just how powerful would the Nirvana God stage be? As soon as Qi Tianlin appeared, his eyes first glanced at Ling Xuanzi, and then locked on Lin Sun. His eyes were cold, and he said, hand over the daughter of my clan's patriarch, and I'll leave your corpse intact. Obviously, Qi Tianlin came for Qi Lingyun. Lin Sun said expressionlessly, if you choose to retreat, maybe I'll spare that bitch's life. If you insist on going the wrong way, she may be the first one to die. Qi Tianlin's eyes burst out a terrifying divine light, tearing 2 cracks in the void. Little thing, do you really think you can threaten me by capturing Lingyun? Then I'll give it a try. As Lin Sun said, a painful groan came from the abyssal sword cauldron above his head. Qi Lingyun was suppressed at this moment, and her slender body showed signs of cracking. Lingyun, Qi Tianlin's face darkened, and he was enraged. His immortal aura undulated like an ocean, causing the universe to tumble. Many monarchs coughed up blood from the impact, and they retreated in shock. Even some monarchs weren't feeling well, and they had to retreat. The immortal aura of a nirvana god was too terrifying. Third uncle, don't worry about me. As long as I kill this bastard, I'll die without regrets. Qi Lingyun's voice came from the abyssal sword cauldron. Lin Sun didn't give her a chance to speak. He operated the abyssal sword cauldron to suppress her again, and he looked at Qi Tianlin. Are you going to retreat or not? Qi Tianlin's face darkened. This was the first time in countless years that he was threatened by a junior like this. However, he couldn't act recklessly. In his eyes, Qi Lingyun's life was 1,000 times more important than Lin Sun's. He couldn't afford to lose her. That's all you've got? Old man, hurry up and move aside. Otherwise, you'll become a sinner of the clan if your patriarch's daughter dies. Ling Xuanzi laughed. Why would I be threatened by you? Qi Tianlin's face was cold, and he continued. I forgot to tell you that a strand of Ling Yun's soul is in the clan. Even if she's killed by you now, the clan has a way to revive her. Ling Xuanzi said, but if it's just a strand of her soul, even if she's revived, her cultivation, foundation, and talent, I'm afraid it'll be difficult for her to recover to her current state, right? Death meant death. If the original body was destroyed, even if it was revived with a strand of her soul, the cultivation that she had painstakingly cultivated for countless years couldn't be recovered. She had to cultivate from the beginning. The most terrifying thing was that without the talent and foundation that the original body had, it would be extremely difficult for her to recover to her peak level, even if she cultivated from the beginning. Qi Tianlin clearly knew this, and his face became even colder. He suppressed the killing intent in his heart and said, I'll give you a chance. Let Lingyun go, and I'll leave immediately. No, we'll naturally let her go after we enter Chaotian City, said Ling Xuanzi. Qi Tianlin couldn't help but laugh angrily. What a good plan. Everyone knows that Chaotian City is covered by the Haotian Order, and no one can act arbitrarily in it. This is the power of order left by the eternal God clan. Even the immortal giants of the eighth heaven dare not offend it. If Ling Xuanzi and Lin Sun really enter Chaotian City, even if the eternal true clan intervenes, no one in the world can do anything to them. Just tell me if you agree or not. Ling Xuanzi said impatiently. The longer it takes, the more disadvantageous it will be for them. Qi Tianlin only felt his chest was stifled. His beard and hair flared up in anger, just as he was about to say something. A voice that was as sonorous as thunder rang out. Want to enter Chaotian City? Wishful thinking. The voice paused between every word, and it shook the heavens and space itself. Even if they were extremely far away, some Emperor Realm figures were shaken to the point they saw stars and almost coughed up blood. Boom! Immediately afterward, an old man with white hair and a youthful face appeared out of thin air. His aura was no weaker than Qi Tianlin's. Zhongli Ju, a mighty figure from the eighth heavens, immortal Zhongli family. Seeing this, many spectators directly retreated. Qi Tianlin alone was already extremely terrifying, and if Zhongli Ju joined the battle, the starry sky would definitely be destroyed. At that time, it would be too late to leave. With just you? Ling Xuanzi's eyes were bright, and his words were filled with disdain. Even at this moment, he was still elegant. Me too. At this moment, a pair of silver wings covered the sky and earth, and a figure of 10,000 feet tall walked out from the depths of the void. He towered into the clouds, stepped on the stars, and carried a pair of silver wings on his back. An immortal aura filled the air, and his pupils were like a pair of golden suns illuminating the starry sky. From afar, he looked like a giant god from the era of creation, walking out from the depths of time, and his voice shook the surroundings. Qi Kanghan, a mighty figure from the Qi family of the eighth heaven, known as the immortal demon venerable of the Nirvana realm. In countless years, he had slaughtered countless opponents and caused many bloody storms in the eternal true world. Chapter 2658. The universe was in turmoil. A terrifying pressure swept across the starry sky like a hurricane. Qi Kanghun's arrival made him the third nirvana god from an immortal force. Seeing this scene, the emperor ancestors who hadn't retreated finally couldn't take it anymore. They turned around and left, not daring to stay any longer. This was too terrifying. Previously, Nan Faidu and the others were like legends, awe-inspiring. Now, with the involvement of the Eighth Heaven's immortal giants, the situation suddenly became terrifying. Xiang Xiaoyuan and Lu Xiangxue also left. They were persuaded by Lin Sun to return to Chaotian City. Both of them left with a heavy and bitter mood. It was useless for them to stay. They would only become a burden. Even if they were to intervene in the battle, they might not be able to withstand the aftermath of the battle. Leaving was the most realistic choice. This way, they wouldn't be a burden to Lin Sun and his senior brother, and they wouldn't encounter any danger. However, leaving like this made them feel depressed. Their strength was too weak. There was nothing they could do. I'm afraid it's not enough with just the two of you. In the universe, Ling Xuanzi's expression was indifferent. A strand of translucent horsetail whisk swept out from his palm and entangled Lin Sun and Kong Ju behind him. This way, Lin Sun and Kong Ju would move together with him during the battle and receive his protection. Not enough? What if we are included? Suddenly, a cold and gloomy voice rang out. In the distant void, a bronze war chariot rumbled over. Chaotic energy surged about it, and atop the war chariot stood a middle-aged man. His black hair hung loosely behind him, and his eyes flickered with a silver radiance that pierced one's soul. Mu Jiangshan, a supreme figure of the Eighth Heaven's immortal giant, the Mu clan. On the other side of the void, the cries of ghosts and gods resounded. The sky shattered silently, and a rain of blood poured down. This was a terrifying phenomenon. A skinny man covered in shadows stepped on a mountain of corpses and a sea of blood. His blood-red hair was extremely eye-catching. Dongwang Kong, a giant from the Dongwang clan, an immortal giant. The surging and surging universe suddenly became oppressive, and it was oppressive to the point of being on the verge of collapse. Because the omnipresent eternal might filled every inch of space, and such energy was sufficient to make any Emperor Realm expert collapse. At this moment, along with the appearance of Zhongli Ju, Qi Kanghun, Mu Jiangshan, Dongwang Kong, and Qi Tianlin, there were an entire 5 Eternal Realm experts here. The power released from their bodies completely obscured this part of the starry sky. It was terrifying to an unimaginable degree. As for Ling Xuanzi and Lin Sun, who were trapped in the center, their hearts became heavy. They had already guessed that there would be a shocking change in the situation, but they didn't expect it to happen so quickly. They really think highly of our Fonso Mountain. Not bad at all. This is what makes it exciting. Ling Xuanzi suddenly laughed as a wisp of madness flashed in the depths of his eyes. Today I, Ling Xuanzi, would like to see who can survive until the end. Shameless boasting. Even if the master of the Heartcore was here, he wouldn't dare to be as arrogant as you. Dongwang Kong stepped on the mountain of corpses and the sea of blood, his cold voice resounding through the universe. These two bastards of the Heartcore probably don't even know what kind of great mistake their master made in the past to bring about such a great disaster. Even now, his fate is unknown, and he doesn't dare to appear in the eternal true world anymore. Qi Kanghun's voice was like thunder as he flapped his silver wings. They were like clouds that covered the starry sky and stirred up billowing gales. Hearing this, Ling Xuanzi and Lin Sun looked at each other, and a hint of surprise flashed in their eyes. Did their master make a great mistake and bring about a great disaster? In this world, who could say that their master was wrong? There must be something hidden in this that they didn't know. Obviously, this guy from Eighth Heaven's undying giant force understood this in his heart. Look at these two bastards of the Heartcore. They don't even know what kind of disaster their master has encountered, and they still dare to commit murder here. They're simply courting death. Mu Jiangshan sneered, and his voice was filled with contempt. Don't talk nonsense, just kill them. I only want the Tower of Endless End and the 3,000 ups and downs left behind by the master of the Heartcore. Zhong Lijue was dressed in a golden robe. He had white hair and a youthful face. He looked kind, but his words were cold and domineering. Don't be hasty. Let's discuss how to divide this fortune first. Dong Wang Kong's voice was cold. How about this? I only want the power of the order in this boy's body. Obviously, he had his eyes on Lin Sun's nirvana order. Oomph. Qi Kanghan revealed a look of displeasure. In my opinion, no matter what fortune it is, it's best to use our own methods to prevent people from being dissatisfied. All right, Mu Jiangshan nodded. They came for revenge, and also to seize the fortune in Lin Sun's body. No matter if it was the primordial Tao tree, the Tower of Endless End, the 3,000 ups and downs, or even a nirvana order that was being nurtured in the abyssal sword cauldron, all of them were sufficient to tempt existences like them. Ling Xuanzi couldn't help but laugh from extreme rage when he saw this scene. The battle hasn't even begun, yet these old bastards are actually treating us like fish on a chopping board and intend to divide it up. That kind of indifferent attitude clearly showed that he didn't put them brothers in his eyes. What's the point of talking so much? Just kill him directly. Mu Jiangshan spoke. He activated the war chariot and executed a great divine ability, causing a surging blood mist to sweep through the starry sky and envelop this place. The battle had begun. Bang! The war chariot smashed over like a huge furnace that burned in the universe, and it burned the stars and melted space. Killing intent surged explosively in Ling Xuanzi's eyes. He waved his horsetail whisk, causing silver beams of divine radiance to slash over like a myriad of strands of sword chi. Amidst the dense and terrifying sounds of collisions, the bronze war chariot glowed while the chaotic chi in its surroundings seethed. However, it was suppressed by the surging silver divine radiance and was unable to move forward. Oomph! Mu Jiangshan's eyes burst forth with divine light. With a clang, he waved a black saber and slashed through the 9 heavens, causing a part of the world to descend. This scene was horrifying. It was just a swing of the saber, but it seemed to have slashed through the 9 heavens, causing a part of the universe to descend and turn into a world to suppress Ling Xuanzi. I'll kill you first, you old thing. Ling Xuanzi let out a long roar, and a 36 lotus appeared under his feet. It covered him and Lin Sun, who were behind him, as he moved across the starry sky and charged forward. In his hand, the 3,000 floating sinks shone brilliantly, and a picture of the slanting moon and 3 stars appeared and swept out. Instantly, the two of them fought fiercely, and terrifying fluctuations shook the universe. At this moment, Lin Sun finally understood how terrifying the Nirvana realm was. Previously, when Ling Xuanzi killed Nan Faidu and the others, he was so casual and domineering. But now, just Mu Jiangshan alone was able to fight against Ling Xuanzi. What are you guys waiting for? Let's finish the battle quickly. Dong Wang Kong's voice was cold. His body glowed, and a terrifying scene of mountains of corpses and seas of blood appeared. His figure was covered in obscure light as he raised his hand to activate a blood sword and slashed at Ling Xuanzi. Clang! Ling Xuanzi resisted with the Tower of Ceaseless, and his opponent's blood sword was sent flying. Under the pincer attack of Dong Wang Kong and Mu Jiangshan, he staggered. And this was just the beginning. Kill! In the void, a golden light flashed. Zhong Lijue, who was wearing a golden robe and had a kind face, raised his hand, and the golden immortal law swept across the sky like a violent sea of lightning, rushing towards Ling Xuanzi. Boom! Qi Kanghan also made a move. A pair of silver wings flapped, and a dazzling light shone. It was like a pair of sky-cutting blades, wrapped in fierce and domineering light. Then all of them moved. Only Qi Tianlin moved. Purple light shot out from his eyes, and his big sleeves fluttered. He opened his mouth and spat out a jade rui, smashing it towards Ling Xuanzi. At this moment, a murderous aura pierced through the universe, shocking the ancients and dazzling the contemporaries. The 5 immortal cultivators from the 8th heaven joined forces and released their power, causing the starry sky to show signs of tumbling and collapsing. It was too terrifying. When one stood in Skyfall City and looked up, one would be able to see the stars and the universe collapsing into pieces while the universe was torn apart. Terrifying divine radiance swept through like a chaotic torrent, and it was a terrifying scene that seemed like the end of the world. Countless cultivators were horrified and cried out involuntarily with shock. A massacre of this level had almost never happened in the vast thousand battle domains in the past. It was too terrifying. At this moment, even someone as powerful as Ling Xuanzi had no choice but to dodge. He didn't want to be surrounded, otherwise he would die here. You can't retreat, and you can't escape. Someone laughed. All the powerhouses took action and worked together to seal this starry sky area. Is that so? Ling Xuanzi's eyes flashed with madness. As if he was desperate, he stared at Mu Jiangshan and raised his hand to summon the Tower of Ceaseless. Boom! The Tower of Ceaseless appeared above Mu Jiangshan's head out of thin air, pouring endless light. Mu Jiangshan had already seen the heaven-defying terror of this treasure. How could he sit still and wait for death? His palms suddenly slashed, and the nearby void that was sealed by the Tower of Ceaseless was torn open. He was about to avoid this attack, but unexpectedly, his figure strangely paused at this moment. It was also at this moment that the Tower of Ceaseless smashed down. Puff! Cracks appeared on the bronze chariot, and it was violently shaken away. Mu Jiangshan, who was standing on it, directly exploded, and his Yuan Shun was about to be killed. At this moment of life and death, a terrifying power of order condensed from Mu Jiangshan's Yuan Shun, forcibly resisting the suppression of the Tower of Ceaseless. Boom! Amidst the intense rumbling, Mu Jiangshan's Yuan Shun appeared tens of thousands of meters away. With a wave of squirming, it actually reformed its Dao body and recovered. However, his aged face was ghastly pale and unsightly to the extreme. Moreover, his eyes were suffused with a wisp of surprise, bewilderment, and fear. The power of time! He roared furiously, and his voice echoed in the universe. The other immortal realm cultivators who were attacking also witnessed what happened to Mu Jiangshan. They were originally quite puzzled, thinking that with Mu Jiangshan's cultivation, he wouldn't have almost died from this attack. Now that they heard Mu Jiangshan's roar, they seemed to have suddenly understood, and their expressions changed slightly. The law of time, the way they looked at Ling Xuanzi changed. There was fear, and there was also a hint of well-concealed jealousy. Time. To immortal realm cultivators like them, it was undoubtedly one of the most supreme, forbidden Daos. At the same time, Ling Xuanzi was also quite surprised, but he soon realized something and transmitted his voice. Little junior brother, you're amazing. Chapter 2659. Mu Jiangshan's sudden injury made the other immortal beings vigilant, and the killing intent in their hearts burned even brighter. Slash. Qi Tianlin, Zhongli Ju, and Qi Kanghun attacked together, all of them releasing peerless killer moves, causing Ling Xuanzi to be besieged once again. Not long after, blood blossomed on Ling Xuanzi's body, and fine cracks appeared on his skin. Dark red blood flowed out. His eyes were surging with cold, killing intent, and his body was covered in dense Dao light, blooming with green glass-like divine radiance. Even though he was besieged, his power became more and more terrifying. This shocked Qi Tianlin and the others. It should be noted that with the ability of the five of them, even if they are in the eighth heaven, they can sweep the entire eighth heaven with ease. However, under their attacks, Ling Xuanzi was still able to resist until now. This was already shocking and beyond their expectations. Kill him, today, is the best opportunity. Qi Tianlin shouted. There were no weaklings present, and it was impossible for Ling Xuanzi to survive after being besieged by Nirvana God Realm experts. Even if I die, I'll drag you old bastard down with me. Ling Xuanzi sneered, and there was no fear in his eyes. He stepped on the 36 stage's green lotus platform and rushed forward like a demon god, killing with all his might. Boom! The heavens shook and the earth quaked. The entire universe was violently roiling, and eternal laws erupted like volcanoes, sweeping out in all directions. Stars shattered, space fell into chaos, and torrents of energy surged out, creating a scene of doomsday that seemed to destroy all things. Looking up from Chaotian City, it was as if a battle of gods was taking place, and it was about to sink the entire universe. Boom! In the intense battle, Dongwon Kong controlled a blood-colored awl, piercing through the void towards Ling Xuanzi's chest, almost piercing through it. Kill! Ling Xuanzi shouted coldly and smashed the Tower of Ceaseless, shattering the blood-colored awl. Dongwon Kong's figure was about to dodge, but he was wrapped up by the silver horsetail whisk. Bang! As the horsetail whisk's silk tightened, Dongwon Kong's body was immediately injured. Blood splattered everywhere. His face was pale and filled with anger. This attack almost took his life. However, during this process, some Undying's attacks also landed on Ling Xuanzi's body. Boom! The 36 grade 6 Azure Lotus platforms that were protecting Ling Xuanzi were destroyed at this moment, turning into a rain of light that covered the sky. Ling Xuanzi's body suddenly shattered into countless pieces of blood, but before the Undying could rejoice, the countless pieces of blood gathered together, restoring Ling Xuanzi to his original state. That's the unspoiled body. No wonder he dares act so insolently. He actually cultivated this type of secret method. An Undying being's expression became ugly. At the same time, his eyes blazed with brilliance, coveting that mysterious inheritance. The unspoiled body, just like the Battle Saint technique, was seen as one of the 9 supreme inheritances of Mount Heart and Core. It was an unparalleled technique created by the Core Master. Legend has it that when cultivated to the extreme, it can ensure that one will never fall into calamities and be unbreakable. For example, just now, if anyone else was hit by the combined attack of these Undying beings, they would have died on the spot. However, though Ling Xuanzi was injured, it wasn't enough to kill him, and he quickly recovered. Boom! The battle was getting more and more intense. Though Ling Xuanzi was covered in blood, he was still charging through the crowd and didn't fall. Ling Xuanzi, how much longer can you resist? Everyone, don't hide anymore. Quickly get rid of him. Someone shouted. Let's see how long you can act today. You won't be able to escape by yourself, no matter what. At this moment, the group of Undying beings increased their attacks, using their strongest techniques. They could tell that Ling Xuanzi was heavily injured and wouldn't be able to hold on for much longer. In fact, if it wasn't for the Tower of Ceaseless and the 3,000 ups and downs, Ling Xuanzi would have collapsed a long time ago. Though his cultivation was heaven-defying, he wasn't strong enough to suppress 5 Nirvana realm Undying beings. Even so, he was still unbelievably strong. His handsome face was stained with blood, and his eyes were filled with crazy killing intent. Little junior brother, use the power related to time later. I'll open a way for you to survive. Bring Uncle Master to Chaotian City. Ling Xuanzi's voice was filled with determination. Lin Sun's heart tightened. The usually arrogant 4th senior brother actually said something like this at this moment. It was obvious that he was going to fight with his life. Just as Lin Sun opened his mouth, Ling Xuanzi interrupted him. Don't be so wishy-washy. Just do as I say. Although I'm not as invincible as eldest senior brother, I'm not a coward. If I let you and Uncle Master die with me, Master and the other senior brothers will definitely look down on me when they find out. But as long as you and Uncle Master are alive, at least it can prove that I, Ling Xuanzi, didn't bring shame to Fangsuan Mountain. At the end of his words, his whole body seemed to be burning. His aura was violent, as if he was going to go all out. The light of Tao illuminated the universe. Looking at Ling Xuanzi at this moment, Lin Sun only felt a sharp pain in his heart, and an unspeakable guilt surged in him. He suddenly felt that he was too mean and rude to the 4th senior brother before. He regarded him as the scourge of Fangsuan Mountain and never really respected and accepted him. And the 4th senior brother didn't seem to care about it at all. Lin Sun couldn't help clenching his fists. Hurry up! Hurry up! Ling Xuanzi shouted. Lin Sun gritted his teeth and said, 4th senior brother, if we're going to die, let's die together. I'm not a coward. Idiot! Ling Xuanzi was so angry that he scolded. But when he noticed the determination in Lin Sun's expression and the trace of guilt in Lin Sun's eyes, he seemed to understand at once and couldn't help but sigh. But at the corner of his mouth, there was a smile from the bottom of his heart. Has this little junior brother who's always disliked me finally found his conscience? It feels like it's fine even if I die. Ling Xuanzi's blood-stained face suddenly revealed a brilliant and unrestrained smile. Little junior brother, I'm your senior brother. How could I possibly let you die with me? As he spoke, the vital energy in his body surged, and he suddenly emanated an unprecedentedly terrifying might. His cultivation seemed as if it was on the verge of being completely ignited. This expanse of the heavens and the earth rumbled and exploded into pieces while peerless might swept out, and it caused the pupils of all the immortal realm experts to constrict abruptly. Quickly suppress him, Chi Kang Hun shouted explosively while a pair of silver wings blotted out the sky, and he emanated a terrifying, imposing aura. So what if I fight with my life on the line? No one in this world can change the outcome. Chi Tianling's expression was cold as he withdrew a pottery jar that was covered in strange patterns. Chaotic chi surged from within it, and it seemed as if it carried a universe and emanated a boundless aura. At this moment, the others exerted all their strength as well. They didn't intend to give Ling Xuanzi the chance to fight desperately at all, and they intended to destroy him completely. However, Ling Xuanzi grinned with an emotionless gaze, and he seemed to regard life and death as nothing. He said, I've risked my life with this attack. If I'm still unable to carve out a path of survival, then wouldn't I be letting down Master's title of peerless throughout the ages all those years ago? Amidst his indifferent voice, his entire body seemed as if it was burning while circle after circle of violent torrents of the Grand Tao swept out like a landslide and a tsunami, and it blocked and dispersed all the attacks that came from all directions. This caused the expressions of those immortal realm experts to change slightly, and they didn't hesitate to execute their trump cards. For a time, all sorts of supreme techniques and treasures carried an eternal glow that could dazzle the ages, and they rumbled, seethed, and swept through the vast universe. Little junior brother, Ling Xuanzi held the Tower of Endless in his hand, and his expression was filled with composure and indifference. No matter if you agree or not, it's no longer up to you. Lin Sun suddenly noticed that his entire body was enveloped by a terrifying force, and he was utterly unable to move. He couldn't help but become anxious, and he said angrily, Ling Xuanzi, do you want me to feel guilty for the rest of my life? Ling Xuanzi roared with laughter. If you think of me as a good person, then kill these old bastards in the future and take their heads as a sacrifice to me, right? Remember to prepare some good wine for me. As he spoke, he took a deep breath and was about to take out the Tower of Endless that he had accumulated throughout his entire life. This attack had absorbed all of his essence, chi, and spirit. Perhaps he would die after this attack, but it was worth it so long as his junior brother Lin Sun and martial uncle Kong, Ju, could survive. The only regret was perhaps it was because he was about to vanish from the world just as he was about to make a name for himself after being suppressed for eons. I misjudged you back then. However, at this moment, a sigh resounded, and it was filled with emotion. The voice wasn't loud, but it shook the surroundings. In the sky, strands of sword chi flowed. When the voice resounded, Ling Xuanzi's desperate attack seemed to have been restrained, and he was actually unable to move at all. At the same time, a figure blocked in front of him. You and this kid can watch the show from the side while I'm still conscious. This person's voice was hoarse, as if he hadn't spoken for a very long time. But as he finished speaking, every single word he spoke was like a sonorous sword that resounded through the heavens and the earth, and it revealed a domineering and fierce aura that struck directly at the heart. At this moment, Ling Xuanzi, who intended to fight to the death, and Lin Sun, who was anxious and furious, couldn't help but be dumbstruck. Shockingly, the figure that stood before them was his martial uncle Kong Ju. His hair was disheveled, his eyes were drowsy, and he seemed down and out like a beggar on the streets. At this moment, he seemed as if he'd become a completely different person. His back was ramrod straight, while his entire body was covered in sword chi that surged through the universe. As he stood there casually, he seemed like a supreme exalt of the sword that looked down upon the world and roared proudly into the nine heavens. Bang! The joint attacks of those Eternal Realm experts were extremely terrifying and formidable. But at this moment, all techniques and treasures hadn't even approached him before they were crushed by the terrifying might emanated by Kong Ju's figure. This caused the expressions of Chi Tianlin, Chi Kang-hun, and the others to change. Never had they imagined that this figure that they'd always overlooked, who seemed like a madman, would actually become a completely different person at this instant. To walk on the path of the Grand Tao while hanging on the desolate Devourer Gourd, overcoming 18 tribulations while he was alive, and attaining eternal karma after his death. I told you long ago that our martial Uncle Kong Ju had always been feigning ignorance. Ling Xuanzi shouted loudly and seemed to be extremely excited. There's only one person in history and history. Lin Sun was overwhelmed with emotions as well. Never had he imagined that Kong Ju, who'd clearly lost all his cultivation, would actually stand out at this moment, when there was something wrong with his mental state. P.S. Goldfish has just returned home from a business trip. She'll continue writing after eating a hot meal. Chapter 2660. It's him. Wasn't his state of mind destroyed a long time ago? How did he recover again? In an instant, Dong Wang Kong recognized him, and his expression became ugly. Kong Ju, the legendary giant on the path of immortals. Even in the eighth heaven, Kong Ju was an extremely resounding name, even causing the top 10 undying forces to be wary of him. However, many years ago, Kong Ju suffered a mental tribulation, causing him to lose control of his Tao heart and become delirious. For the 10 undying giants, such a Kong Ju was no longer a threat. Many years ago, in order to seek the fortune of nirvana, the Dongwang family even used the delirious Kong Ju to entice him to take action personally to snatch the fortune of immortals. Yes, many years ago, he lost all his cultivation base and stayed in Chaotian City like a piece of trash. If it wasn't for the protection of the Haotian order, he would have been killed many times. Zhongli Ju's eyes were cold. For others, they might not know the identity of Kong Ju, but for them, the undying giants from the eighth heaven, how could they not know? When they learned that Kong Ju had lost his cultivation base and was living on the streets of Chaotian City, these undying giants personally went to inspect him. In the end, they all got the same answer. That is, as Kong Ju's state of mind collapsed, his cultivation base was destined to be destroyed and could never be restored. But now, Kong Ju actually released such unparalleled might. This unexpected event caught these undying beings off guard, causing them to be extremely shocked and bewildered. Playing tricks. Chi Kang-hun snorted coldly. He's just playing tricks. Since his state of mind collapsed, his cultivation base is destined to be unable to be restored. In my opinion, this old bastard is just playing tricks. He won't be able to hold on for long. He flapped his silver wings, releasing a terrifying aura. He didn't believe that Kong Ju had truly recovered. He directly attacked. A wing rose up, and it was like a heavenly blade that lay across the sky. It carried an eternal glow as it slashed towards Kong Ju. So, you all still remember me. Kong Ju, whose hair was disheveled, had a blank look in his eyes. At this moment, being able to wake up seemed to have reminded him of many things. Seeing the huge silver wing slashing towards him, his figure didn't move. Only a misty, sword energy swept out from his body. Chi. This strand of sword chi was extremely light, yet it easily pierced through the silver wings and tore off an expanse of flesh, and it was swift and fierce to an inconceivable extent. Chi Kang-hun cried out loudly from the pain, and he revealed a shocked expression as he stopped attacking at the first possible moment. Everyone present was moved. There wasn't a single person who wasn't shocked. Some people felt horrified because a single strand of sword chi easily destroyed Chi Kang-hun's killer move. Could it be that Kong Ju's cultivation has really recovered? For a brief moment, the place fell silent. Although these immortal experts had never fought with Kong Ju before, they had heard of him and knew how terrifying his attainments in the immortal path were. A long time ago, Kong Ju was just a character who had just entered the eighth heaven. Although he was famous, the top 10 giants didn't put him in their eyes. However, later on, because he was fighting for a fortune related to order energy, Kong Ju was surrounded and attacked by many undying beings. He was just one person, yet he fought against all of them. Moreover, under those circumstances, he killed his way in and out, surrounded by so many people. Yet he still killed a few undying beings and heavily injured many others. After that battle, it caused an uproar in the eighth heaven. Because it was too terrifying and extraordinary, even the top 10 immortal forces were shocked. In the years that followed, Kong Ju also experienced one dangerous battle after another. Every time he set off a monstrous storm, the eighth heaven was in turmoil and countless powerhouses were terrified. It is no exaggeration to say that at that time, Kong Ju was definitely a freak, a tyrannical existence that everyone was afraid of. His attainment on the path of immortality even made some immortal-level antiques who had lived for countless years shudder in fear. If it weren't for his mental state suddenly suffering a calamity many years ago, causing him to become a madman, the entire eighth heaven would have been plunged into turmoil and bloodshed. But now, this ruthless man, who is feared by many cultivators in the eighth heaven, seems to be showing signs of recovering his former power. How could people not be shocked? Martial uncle, you finally admitted that you made a mistake back then. Ling Xuanzi smiled brightly and was in a good mood. The appearance of Kong Ju swept away all the worries in his heart. In the past, when he was still young, he was evaluated by Kong Ju, who went to Fangsuan Mountain as a guest. This child is born to be rebellious. If he does evil, he will definitely be a great disaster. Ling Xuanzi will never forget this matter. Kong Ju smiled and said, I can see that after being suppressed for so many years, your temperament has been tempered. I naturally look at you in a different light. You still have the mood to talk about the past? I will send you on your way now. At this moment, Dong Wang Kong snorted coldly in the distance. He raised his hand and summoned a big bell. Clang! The large bell was distant, grand, and mysterious. It emitted chaotic chi as it resounded through the sky, and it caused the world to seem as if it was about to collapse. Boundless divine might effused out from the body of the bell and condensed into numerous ancient and mysterious markings of the Tao. They were brilliant like immortal gold, and they were dazzling to the extreme. Eastern Emperor Bell, the other undying beings nearby, all revealed strange expressions. They didn't expect that Dong Wang Kong would bring the supreme treasure of his clan with him this time. That's an immortal Tao weapon renowned in the eighth heaven, and it possesses boundless divine might. Everyone, it's already at this point. If we still don't use our trump cards, then these bastards will probably look down on us for being incompetent. Dong Wang Kong's expression was cold as he spoke indifferently. That's how it should be. As he spoke, Qi Kanghun opened his mouth, and a palm leaf fan that flowed with auspicious light appeared. When the fan floated in the air, 4 types of divine radiance, wind, lightning, earth, and fire, surged out, and it was extremely terrifying. 4 spirit palm leaf fan. It was also an incredible immortal Tao weapon. At the same time, Mu Jiangshan, Zhongli Ju, and Qi Tianlin respectively summoned their respective treasures. They were a divine whip, a pair of bronze maces, and a 9-color divine stone, respectively. Kill! Dong Wang Kong attacked at the first possible moment. The Eastern Emperor Bell shook, and it descended towards Kong Ju with extreme speed. Auspicious energy surged while divine light surged, and the deep sound of the bell seemed to split the heavens and the earth apart. It shook the universe and crushed space, and it was an extremely shocking scene. However, the divine whip was even faster than this strike. It was like a divine chain of order that covered the heavens and the earth, and it carried a blazing light as it whipped down fiercely. Soulfall whip. According to rumor, even an eternal figure would be dispirited by the whip of this treasure, and it was an extremely overbearing treasure for the soul. Kong Ju's gaze was like a bolt of lightning as he stood on the spot without moving. However, 33 levels of worlds surged out from his body. There were numerous ancient kingdoms floating within them, a myriad of living beings praying and worshiping them, and there were even various gods and Buddhas bowing their heads as they chanted scriptures. A supreme aura of eternal swept out from Kong Ju's body, and he was like the ruler of the 30 heavens that stood towering above the world. Bang! He stretched out his hand and flicked, and he blasted the soulfall whip that struck down toward him flying. At the same time, he gestured with his hand, causing a world of the heavens to condense into a strand of sword chi that appeared in his hand, and then he lightly swept it. Clang! Dong Wang Kong let out a muffled groan as he staggered back. Even the Eastern Emperor bell he utilized was blasted flying by the terrifying sword chi, and its wail resounded through the universe. Woo, 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 a strange gale whistled over, and it surged with the profundities of the eternal laws of wind, lightning, earth, and fire. This was Qi Kanghun's attack. He waved the quad soul banana fan lightly, and then this expanse of the heavens and the earth was covered in boundless and terrifying gale that raged towards the surroundings. Swish! Kong Ju still stood on the spot without moving, and he flicked his sleeve. Numerous strands of sword chi shot out explosively like numerous divine rays of order, and they shattered the gale that covered the sky while the eternal laws of wind, lightning, earth, and fire collapsed and transformed into a rain of light that scattered down. Qi Kanghun's figure was shocking. He utilized the quad soul banana fan while unfolding his silver wings that blotted out the sky to strike the sword chi that shot over explosively. Pooh! Pooh! In the end, in an instant, the pair of silver wings on Qi Kanghun's back that seemed like clouds that covered the sky were actually slashed off by the sword chi, and blood sprayed through the surroundings. This scene shocked everyone. Ling Xuanzi and Lin Sun glanced at each other, and they couldn't help but gasp. In the blink of an eye, Martial Uncle Kong Ju had successively destroyed the killer moves of numerous Eternal Realm experts by himself, and he revealed the supreme elegance of this realm with ease. This was Kong Ju. He revealed peerless might as soon as he regained consciousness. Even though his clothes were still ragged, his hair was still disheveled. As he stood there, he seemed like an exalted overlord that pressed down upon the universe. Strands of immortal energy effused out while 33 levels surged into appearance by his side. Every single level was a world that contained numerous ancient kingdoms. Moreover, there were countless living beings there, and they were prostrating themselves in worship towards him while chanting scriptures. Such a scene was truly sufficient to shock the ages, and it was an unimaginably strange and grand scene. On the other side, Qi Kanghun stopped moving. His pair of wings had been severed, causing him to be injured, and he seemed to be in an extremely sorry state. At this moment, his expression was extremely unsightly. Dong Wang Kong, Mu Jiangshan, and the others had livid expressions while their gazes were heavy. At this moment, Kong Ju seemed to be as terrifying as the rumors said, and it caused them to feel that he was extremely difficult to deal with. I can't wait any longer, Kong Ju muttered to himself, while a trace of pain that he couldn't restrain flashed abruptly in his eyes. After that, he took a step forward and swung his fist. Bang! The 33 levels of the ancient world floated up and down while transforming into all things, and a river of stars surged. Kong Ju's punch was world-shattering, and the sound of ancient scriptures actually resounded as soon as it was executed. This was bound to be a peerless strike. Blood and chi shot through the sun and moon, and the heavens and the earth seemed as if they were being reincarnated and fell into a terrifying scene. Pooh! Fresh blood sprayed. Mu Jianshan was the first to bear the brunt of this attack. He'd originally intended to dodge this punch, yet he'd never expected that the vital energy around his body had been completely locked onto, causing him to be unable to dodge at all. So he could only go head-on against it. Even if he exhausted all his strength, he was still unable to resist the might of this punch, and his body was directly blasted apart. Its might was like a supreme exalted figure swinging his fist forward with indomitable will, and it carried the belief that he was invincible as he swung his strongest attack. Everyone was stunned. Merely a single punch had blasted apart the body of Mu Jiangshan, who was at the rebirth god realm. How domineering was this? Peerless and shocking. It was sufficient to shock the entire world. Mu Jiangshan, who'd only managed to escape calamity with his soul core, let out a loud cry, and he revealed a terrified expression as if he'd been deeply provoked. The hearts of the other Eternal Realm experts went cold as well. How are we supposed to continue? Chapter 2661. Mu Jiangshan, who had his body shattered, was in extreme pain. Even though he immediately rebuilt his body, that punch had already heavily injured his origin, and it was impossible for him to recover right away. What was even more terrifying was that Kong Ju didn't stop. Boom! Kong Ju, who took the initiative to attack, was like a supreme being. 33 layers of heavens floated around him, and his chanting was like thunder, shaking the surroundings. He still used a simple and domineering punch. Only this time, it was even more vast and contained the might of all things in the universe. Those undying beings all acted to block Kong Ju's attack. With a honglong sound, this was a type of unmatched fist intent that tore through everything in its path. Those undying beings were all shaken until they staggered backwards. Then, Mu Jiangshan, who had just recovered, screamed. His body was covered in cracks. This punch shattered his arm and pierced through his chest. Blood splattered everywhere and dyed the void red. This was an unbelievable scene that froze here, causing many people's hearts to tremble. This was simply like a legend. With just 2 punches, a Nirvana realm undying was pierced through, domineering and domineering. Mu Jiangshan's body and soul were both destroyed, unable to recover. Quick, stop him. Kill. A great battle erupted. Everyone attacked at the same time, activating their precious techniques. In an instant, the void was in chaos. Heaven and earth seemed like it was being split apart. This place was about to explode. Mu Jiangshan's death deeply stimulated those undying beings. They all attacked violently, no longer holding back, and used the strongest techniques in their lives. Kong Ju's expression was indifferent as he strode through space and attacked. Every single move he made was filled with extraordinary might, and he easily crushed those killer moves that could shock the ages, causing him to be formidable to an inconceivable extent. If they didn't see it with their own eyes, even Ling Xuanzi and Lin Sun wouldn't believe that their junior uncle would be this powerful when he was awake. Clang! Zhongli Ju's palm surged with peerless sword energy that could cut down the sun, moon, and stars. When this sword energy shot into the sky, even the sky was cut in half. However, it still couldn't stop Kong Ju's fist energy. The sword energy was crushed like dried twigs, turning into a rain of light that splashed everywhere. Moreover, that terrifying fist energy broke through all obstructions, arriving in front of him, directly blasting his body apart. It was too fast. Everything happened incomparably fast. Even someone as strong as Zhongli Ju was like a piece of paper before this punch. His defensive treasures and strength were completely dispersed, and his entire body exploded in the sky and turned into a bloody mist. This shocked everyone. It was too sudden. Mu Jiangshan had been domineering his entire life, and had even reached the Nirvana God realm. However, he had still been blasted to pieces and perished. Even someone as ruthless and fierce as Zhongli Ju was killed at this moment, and his body was turned into minced meat. These types of figures died one after another. How could it not be shocking? How could it not draw attention? Many people felt great fear. Kong Ju's power made the bodies of the undying beings here go cold, as if they fell into an icy cavern. This was extremely terrifying. They were all giants of the 8th heaven. They had lived for a long time and had experienced countless trials and tribulations. They were truly powerful figures. However, it wasn't difficult for Kong Ju to kill them. and he didn't pay an unbearable price. He killed them directly, cleanly, and neatly. On the battlefield, Kong Ju's figure was straight, and 33 worlds appeared around him. They rotated around him like light, sinking and floating. One could see the scenery of one great world after another. Living beings prayed, gods and demons kowtowed, and all spirits worshipped. It was mysterious and transcendent. This was an unimaginable power, beyond people's imagination and cognition. But at this moment, Kong Ju's figure suddenly twitched violently, and he stopped in the void. A look of pain and confusion appeared on his face, and there was even a hint of struggle in his eyes. Ling Xuanzi and Lin Sun's hearts thumped at the same time. It couldn't be that Martial Uncle's old illness is going to flare up again, right? Kill. Seeing this scene, Qi Tianlin and the others, who were originally terrified, didn't hesitate to attack as if they had seized the best opportunity. Boom! The Eastern Emperor bell rumbled. An auspicious light splashed everywhere, smashing fiercely on Kong Ju's body. The latter was directly shaken and staggered back, his body stained with blood. Such a scene caused Qi Tianlin and the others to be extremely excited. This old fellow's mental state really hasn't recovered. Kong Ju died. Qi Kanghun roared with laughter as he swung the soulfall whip, and it was like a ray of light that whipped fiercely towards Kong Ju. However, this strike was grabbed by a raise of Kong Ju's hand. Kong Ju had a savage expression and a ruthless gaze, yet revealed a trace of resolution as he said, "Even if my mental state has fallen, killing all of you is as easy as flipping my palm." Qi Kanghun's pupils constricted, and he cried out in his heart. Bang! The soulfall whip suddenly emanated peerless might, and it shook Qi Kanghun's right arm to the point it almost shattered, causing him to let go at the first possible moment. Slap! Kong Ju's wrist shook, and the soulfall whip suddenly smashed down, and it struck fiercely onto Qi Kanghun's body before he could even dodge. Blood sprayed while Qi Kanghun let out a shrill cry of intense pain, and his soul was almost shattered by this whip. Bang! Amidst rumbling, Dongwang Kong controlled the Eastern Emperor bell, while Qi Tianlin struck out a 9-color divine stone, and they launched a pincer attack at Kong Ju for both sides. Kong Ju didn't dodge, and he went head-on against them with his body. Amidst the deafening sound of collision, he was injured once more. His body was blasted apart, his bones were exposed, and blood sprayed like a waterfall. However, he seized this opportunity to stride forward ferociously, and then he suddenly stretched out his hand and tore through the sky before grabbing the heavily injured Qi Kanghun in his hand. No! Qi Kanghun cried out loudly with terror as he struggled madly. But it was in vain in the end. As Kong Ju exerted strength with his hand, his entire body was crushed fiercely like a bug, and his body and soul core exploded while mixed within scarlet-red blood. An eternal figure at the rebirth god realm like this had actually been crushed into pieces. This overbearing and bloody scene caused Kong Ju to seem like a fiend god. However, Ling Xuanzi and Lin Sun were unable to arouse any happiness in their hearts, because at this moment, Kong Ju was injured as well, and the situation he was in wasn't optimistic at all. Moreover, his aura was extremely violent and chaotic, and it seemed as if it would collapse completely at any moment. "Martial Uncle, I'll help you." Ling Xuanzi charged out at the first possible moment, and he withdrew the endless pagoda and the 3,000 upheavals as he charged at Qi Tianlin. Presently, Qi Kanghun, Mu Jianshan, and Zhongli Ju had been killed, and only Qi Tianlin and Dongwang Kong remained. The situation was completely different from before. Qi Tianlin utilized the 9-color divine rock, and its might was terrifying as he entered into a fierce battle with Ling Xuanzi. On the other side, Kong Ju, who had a gaze filled with madness and a vicious aura, seemed to be enduring extreme pain. But even then, he still teleported resolutely and charged towards Dongwang Kong. Bang! He swung his fists and seemed to intend to blast Zhou Su apart, and the might of his fists was simply capable of shocking the ages. Dong Kong exerted all his strength to resist, and he replaced offense with defense. The Eastern Emperor bell droned without end, and even though it was being suppressed by the might of Kong Ju's fists, it wasn't crushed in a short period of time. The reason was that even though Kong Ju's strength was still boundlessly terrifying at this moment, his mind was obviously in chaos, and it gave Dong Kong an opportunity to catch his breath. Old thing, when your state of mind collapses, it'll be the day you die. Dong Kong shouted, and his gaze was terrifyingly cold. Kong Ju ignored him, or rather, he couldn't be distracted at all. His state of mind was on the verge of losing control, and his mind was muddled as well. He could only maintain a trace of clarity at this moment. During the battle, there were many times when he lost control of his killing moves, and they were thrown around randomly. This made Dong Kong even calmer, and he even started to counterattack. From time to time, he would take advantage of Kong Ju's weakness, and he would continuously injure Kong Ju. This time, who can save you? Dong Kong said coldly. Bang! Suddenly, a violent collision could be heard from afar, and then blood splattered. Dong Kong's pupils suddenly shrank, because in the battle not far away, Qi Tianlin was actually injured at this moment. His body was shattered by the Tower of Ceaseless, and only a portion of his primordial spirit managed to escape. This, Dong Kong couldn't believe it. The power of time, the power of time. Qi Tianlin's primordial spirit screamed in shock and anger. This was naturally the effect of the forbidden divine ability. Together with Ling Xuanzi, it caught Qi Tianlin off guard and shattered his body. At this moment, Qi Tianlin, who had lost his body, wanted to escape immediately. But it was already too late. Bang! The 3,000 floating suns turned into the pattern of a crescent moon and 3 stars, and it spread out, sealing the void around him. Ling Xuanzi had already charged over with the Tower of Ceaseless. Instantly, Qi Tianlin's primordial spirit was also shattered, and it dissipated in the void. A series of scenes happened in the blink of an eye, and it was unbelievably fast. Even Dong Kong was agitated by this scene. How could he fight? Kong Ju might not be a threat anymore, but Ling Xuanzi was still not to be underestimated. Uncle Master, leave this old fart to me. Hurry up and come back. Ling Xuanzi charged over with a murderous aura, and his handsome face was filled with hatred. As he spoke, he directly activated the Tower of Ceaseless and charged towards Dong Kong. Clang! Amidst the earth-shattering sound of collision, the Eastern Emperor bell blocked the attack of the Tower of Ceaseless. But at the same time, Kong Ju let out a loud roar, and he also charged over, punching towards Dong Kong. Even though Dong Kong tried his best to resist the unparalleled fist energy, his defensive treasures and Dao arts were shattered like paper. His entire body was smashed by the fist, and his bones were broken. His figure was sent flying. Seizing this opportunity, Ling Xuanzi directly pounced forward. The Tower of Ceaseless was like a divine mountain that descended from the heavens, and it ruthlessly smashed down on Dong Kong before he could stabilize himself. Bang! The heavens and earth cracked, and the void became chaotic. Dong Kong, this rebirth god realm expert, wasn't able to wait for the opportunity to kill Kong Ju in the end, and he was killed on the spot by the joint forces of Kong Ju and Ling Xuanzi instead. Moreover, his body and soul core were transformed into ash amidst that attack and vanished completely. It's done. Ling Xuanzi was relieved, and he revealed a relaxed expression. Lin Sun, who had been protected by him, could not help but let out a long sigh. But before the two could rejoice, clang! A piercingly cold sword cry resounded, and it reverberated in the universe. What was even faster than the sound was a flying sword. It was like a ray of light that tore through time and space, and it flew over at an unbelievable speed. Poof! The sword pierced through Kong Ju's body. P.S. The second update is slightly later. Chapter 2662. The sword pierced through Kong Ju's body. Lin Sun felt as if he was struck by lightning, and his eyes almost popped out of their sockets. How is this possible? It wasn't easy for him to kill those 5 undying beings. It wasn't easy for him to fight his way out. However, at this moment, all of his hopes were crushed by this sudden sword. "Martial uncle," Lin Sun cried out in a hoarse voice. In his field of vision, a bloody hole appeared on Kong Ju's chest. His aura was declining, and he no longer had the demeanor of a supreme master. This sword didn't just heavily injure him, it seemed to have crushed his state of mind as well, causing him to fall into a muddled state of mind. "I just want to drink. Why do you want to kill me?" Kong Ju's eyes were filled with confusion as he cried out in pain. Swoosh! In the next moment, Ling Xuanzi had already made a move. He kept Kong Ju's figure, and then he grabbed Lin Sun and teleported towards Chaotian City with all his might. His expression was cold and livid, and his eyes surged with terrifying madness. His entire body seemed to be burning as he gritted his teeth tightly. This battle was too difficult and dangerous. From killing the 4 Immortal Realm experts, Nanfaidu, Gu Lingjin, Li Shangjuan, and Yun Jiwei, to being besieged by Dongwang Kong and the other 4 Immortal Realm experts, it could be said that every step he took was filled with danger, and he barely escaped death. If it wasn't for Kong Ju, the consequences would simply be unimaginable. But now, after killing Dongwang Kong and the others with great difficulty, a sudden sword came and destroyed everything. This blow was simply indescribable, especially when he saw martial Uncle Kong Ju being pierced by this sword. Ling Xuanzi couldn't help but feel infuriated, and his eyes were bloodshot with hatred. But his rationality told him that he couldn't resist stubbornly like this. He wasn't afraid of death, but he couldn't watch as his junior brother Lin Sun died with him. "Little junior brother, bring senior uncle along with you. This time, I'll give it my all to open up a path of survival for you. Remember, if I really die this time, help me kill those enemies. In this way, I'll be able to die a worthy death, and I'll be able to die in peace." As they teleported, Ling Xuanzi's voice was rare and gentle, as if he was giving instructions for his death. "Fourth senior brother, if we're going to die, we'll die together." Lin Sun's eyes were bleeding, and he was mad with hatred. He hadn't experienced such frustration for many years since he started his cultivation. The feeling of powerlessness made him so depressed that he was about to explode. "Fool! Martial Uncle Kong Ju has already sacrificed so much for us. Do you want him to die with us? Only if you're alive will Martial Uncle Kong Ju have a chance to survive." Ling Xuanzi's expression was calm, and his eyes were filled with self-mockery. "Many years ago, I was like a scourge in Fangsuan Mountain, and I did many stupid things. Be it second senior brother Zhong Xiu, third senior sister Rosu, or the other junior brothers and junior sisters, all of them rejected me. I don't blame them. When I think of myself back then, I also want to slap myself a few times. But no matter what, I, Ling Xuanzi, regard Fangsuan Mountain as my home. In the depths of my heart, I will never harm my fellow disciples. Master knows this the best. Otherwise, he wouldn't have just suppressed me back then. Haha, do you think I talk a little too much? But I've been holding these words in my heart for a long time. Perhaps when a man is about to die, his words are kind. In the future, when you see other senior brothers and junior sisters, tell them that I, Ling Xuanzi, may be a scourge and a heinous person. I don't expect them to change their opinion of me, but in my heart, they are all my senior brothers and junior sisters." His voice gradually became lower. Lin Sun's heart was filled with mixed feelings. It was also at this time that he knew that the conceited fourth senior brother also felt guilty for the senior brothers and junior sisters of Fangsuan Mountain. He had really changed. Just as martial Uncle Kong Ju said, the years of being suppressed might have made fourth senior brother temper his mind and become different from before. Clang! The sonorous sword sound rang again, like the sound of soul locking from hell. At the moment when the sound rang, Ling Xuanzi was seriously injured. A sword chi tore his back, his skin and flesh were torn open, and blood flowed. He let out a muffled groan, but his eyes were still calm as he moved crazily with Lin Sun. Lin Sun didn't know what terrible injuries Ling Xuanzi had suffered at the moment, but his heart was twitching fiercely An unspeakable pain and hatred surged out. Who was it? Who on earth attacked again? Lin Sun turned his head, and his deep black eyes were full of madness, but he couldn't see the enemy. He could only see a flying sword floating in the distant universe. It was as black as ink, like a sharp blade condensed from darkness. Even though it was extremely far away, it still exuded a breathtaking and terrifying aura. Vaguely, there seemed to be a majestic figure standing behind the flying sword. Its power covered the starry sky, and it was unimaginably terrifying. Clang! The sword sound rang again. It was as cold as the wind, stirring the universe. Lin Sun's eyes were stinging, and he could no longer see anything. However, he could sense that Ling Xuanzi was injured once more, and a handful of boiling blood splattered onto his face. Fourth senior brother. Lin Sun's eyes widened when he saw that Ling Xuanzi's chest seemed to have been cut open from the back, and his body seemed to be on the verge of dispersing. His injuries were extremely serious. It's fine. This small injury isn't enough to kill me. Junior brother, look, we're almost at Chaotian City. Ling Xuanzi said softly, and his expression was calm. In the distance, the outline of Chaotian City appeared under the mysterious power of restriction. Even the terrifying fluctuations of the battle in the universe couldn't shake it at all. The mysterious power of restriction came from the spirit of order, Haotian. However, at this moment, a figure suddenly appeared out of thin air and blocked Ling Xuanzi's path. It was a tall old man with snow-white hair and beard. He wore a feather robe, and his eyes were filled with vicissitudes of life. His body flowed with the law of immortality. Fu Huaiqin. If it was those cultivators in Chaotian City, they would definitely recognize at a glance that this old man was an immortal figure of the Fu clan of the Eighth Heaven. Originally, this old man hoped to recruit you to the Fu clan, but unfortunately, you're from Mount Fongsuan. The affairs of the world are unpredictable. Fu Huaiqin looked at Lin Sun and let out a long sigh. Scram! Ling Xuanzi shouted and took out the Tower of Ceaseless. He was practically putting his life on the line, and his power was extremely terrifying. Fu Huaiqin's sleeves fluttered, and a verdant mountain appeared between his fingers. It flowed with a unique aura of immortality, and it blocked the attack from afar. Ling Xuanzi was just about to continue when a sword chi swept over from behind and severed his left arm, causing blood to splatter. This attack caused Ling Xuanzi to stagger, and his aura almost dissipated. He was seriously injured, but even so, he still stubbornly stood in front of Lin Sun to protect him. Fu Huaiqin looked into the depths of the universe in the distance, and a hint of solemnity appeared in his eyes. That's the sword of judgment of the number one immortal giant, the Wang clan. Even if this old man didn't take action, you probably wouldn't have survived. Wang clan, the number one immortal giant. Sword of judgment. Lin Sun firmly remembered all of this, and his eyes turned red. He swore that if he could survive this time, one day he would return it tenfold, 100-fold. Little junior brother, looks like we can't go to Chaotian City. But it said that the path to the eternal true world is behind Chaotian City. I'll send you off now. As he spoke, a burning light of the Tao surged out from Ling Xuanzi's body, and his essence, energy, and spirit seemed to have been ignited at this moment. With my spirit, formed the seamless gate. An illusory gate suddenly appeared above Ling Xuanzi's head. Oomph! Fu Huaiqin's face sank. The verdant mountain whistled through the sky and pressed down on space as it smashed towards Ling Xuanzi. Who would have thought that such a terrifying attack would actually be forcefully blocked by the burning light of the Tao around Ling Xuanzi's body, and it couldn't move an inch forward. With my blood, open the path of life and death. Ling Xuanzi's expression was solemn as an obscure Tao chant came from his lips. He was heavily injured and on the verge of death, but his handsome face was filled with calmness. Endless burning light of the Tao surged around him like an ocean. In an instant, it enveloped Lin Sun and threw him into the illusory gate. During this period of time, Lin Sun struggled and screamed in an attempt to stay, but it was to no avail. He could only watch helplessly as he was enveloped and disappeared into the illusory gate. Fourth senior brother, if you die, I'll make the 10 immortal giants die with you. Lin Sun screamed hysterically, and his heart was replaced by endless hatred. He watched helplessly as his fourth senior brother paid the price of his life just to open a path for him to live, and he didn't even have the strength to refuse. It was like countless sharp blades that tore his heart apart, making him feel like he was about to collapse. Junior brother, if there's a next life, we'll meet again. Ling Xuanzi smiled faintly with a gratified expression, and then he waved his hand. Boom! The gate suddenly turned into a ray of light, tore through the universe, and disappeared. Even if Fu Huaiqin tried to block it with all his might, he couldn't stop it, because Ling Xuanzi had paid the price of his life to obtain a chance of survival. Puff! In the next moment, a sword chi swept over from afar, piercing through Ling Xuanzi's figure, causing his body to explode completely at this moment, and blood rained all over the sky. Only his spirit survived by luck, but it was already on the verge of death. At this moment, he was as calm and composed as before. He clenched the 3,000 floating sinks and endless tower that were dyed red by his blood, and murmured softly, Master, I've always wanted to prove that my path is correct, but now, I don't have the chance to prove it to you. His spirit dimmed and became extremely illusory. His consciousness gradually became blurred. Do you want to die like this? Impossible. I'm going to restrain your spirit and refine it into a treasure so that you can neither live nor die. Seeing that Lin Sun was sent away under his nose, Fu Huaiqin's face was extremely ugly. He urged the verdant mountain to envelop Ling Xuanzi's spirit that was on the verge of collapse and dissipation. Boom! The green light rain was like a tide. When it was about to suppress and imprison Ling Xuanzi's spirit, the endless tower that was dyed red by Ling Xuanzi's blood suddenly trembled at this moment. P.S. There will be more updates tonight. Chapter 2663. The endless pagoda flashed up silently, and the glow of the Tao it emanated spread out. Bang! The verdant rain of light that enveloped the sky suddenly exploded apart, and even the treasure on the mountain was shaken to the point of cracking apart like a spider web. Fu Huaiqin was shocked, and he put away the treasure at the first possible moment while his expression was anxious and bewildered. Ling Xuanzi's consciousness was blurry. Even if he was on the verge of death, he couldn't help but ridicule when he saw this scene. You can't even break through a single treasure. Old bastard, you're really trash. As soon as he finished speaking, he seemed to have realized something, and he suddenly raised his eyes to look at the endless pagoda. Clang! The piercingly cold sound of slaughter resounded once more, and a strand of sword chi suddenly arrived. The endless pagoda glowed, and at this extremely dangerous moment, it obliterated the strand of sword chi inch by inch. In the depths of the universe, where the black flying sword floated, a surprised voice resounded as well, and it seemed to be shocked by this scene. Right at this moment, Ling Xuanzi's eyes opened wide. A mighty figure surged out from within the endless pagoda, and he was bathed in the illusory glow of the Tao. As soon as he appeared, he was like a supreme overlord that had descended into the world, causing this expanse of the universe to fall into unprecedented terror. His aura was extremely mystical. It was neither Confucian nor Taoist, neither God nor devil. It was extremely profound and indescribable. It was like the embodiment of the grand Tao that stood towering above the universe. Ling Xuanzi seemed as if he was struck by lightning, and he cried out involuntarily, Master? The mighty figure sighed lightly and said, Ling Xuanzi, you've already overcome this tribulation. From today onward, you're still the fourth successor of the Heart Core. Master, it's really you. Ling Xuanzi was like a child as he cried out uncontrollably. If his body was still here, he would have probably cried tears of excitement a long time ago. A very, very long time ago, his master was like a father in his heart. Even though he was suppressed for countless years, he had never felt hatred towards his master. He only wanted to prove himself to his master, and he yearned to obtain his master's acknowledgement. Why lose your composure like this? Your actions today have completely exceeded my expectations. Now, Master will take you away. The mighty figure spoke as he lightly patted Ling Xuanzi on the shoulder. Instantly, Ling Xuanzi's soul that was about to dissipate condensed once more, and it radiated with an extremely surging vitality. Master, if I open the seamless gate, I'm worried that when Junior Brother heads to the eternal true world, he will. Ling Xuanzi remembered something and quickly said. The Master of the Heart Core's voice was calm, and it carried a secretive tone as it said, "It's fine. This is his final chance to attain rebirth. I can interfere in your matters, but I'm unable to interfere in his path towards the Tao. This tribulation should be resolved by him. You the Master of the Heart Core?" In the distance, Fu Huaiqin, who'd been dumbstruck since a long time ago, cried out loudly, and her face was filled with disbelief. Didn't you commit a grave mistake back then? Didn't you die a long time ago? He couldn't calm down. A long time ago, the owner of the Heart Core passed through the 8th heaven and went to the 9th heaven alone, causing a sensation in the 8th heaven. The 10 immortal giants also wanted to stop him, but no one could, because at that time, the Master of the Heart Core had already displayed a power that almost exceeded the immortal realm. He wasn't someone anyone could fight against. This matter was even seen as a humiliation to the 8th heaven. It was kept a secret, and no one knew about it. If this matter were to spread, it would definitely damage the dignity of the 10 immortal forces. However, to everyone's surprise, it didn't take long for news to spread from the 9th heaven that the Master of the Heart Core had committed a grave mistake and encountered an unimaginable calamity. It was impossible for him to appear in the eternal true world again. This caused a stir among the 10 immortal giants. They believed that the Master of the Heart Core was destined to be killed by the eternal God race, and it was very likely that he had already fallen. Moreover, from that time onwards, the Master of the Heart Core had indeed never appeared again. Until now, people had almost forgotten about this matter. But Fu Huaiqin never expected that at this moment, she would see this supreme figure who was like a legend again. Could it be that he didn't die back then? The Master of the Heart Core turned around, glanced at Fu Huaiqin, and explained with rare patience, "I'm just a wisp of willpower. I don't know whether my main body is dead or not." Fu Huaiqin was taken aback and was at a loss for words. He couldn't help but sneer coldly. "Then I might as well tell you, your main body is already dead. It was killed by a big shot from the 9th heaven. T. Even if your entire Fu family is dead, my master won't be harmed in the slightest." Ling Xuanzi cursed. In his heart, his master was like a father, and he couldn't be blasphemed. Believe it or not, it's up to you," Fu Huaiqin said, turned around, and left. He realized that something was wrong and didn't dare to stay any longer. "You heard my disciple, and you plan to leave just like that?" The Master of the Heart Core's calm voice came from behind, causing Fu Huaiqin's body to stiffen. He ran even faster as if he was desperate. Chaotian City was not far away, and he didn't believe that the Master of the Heart Cores could still resist the great heaven order once he escaped into the city. However, even though his body was clearly moving, the void around him seemed to have frozen and stopped. No matter how he flew, he couldn't move even half a step. This scene made his forehead break out in cold sweat, and his soul almost jumped out of his body. In the future, there will be people who will deal with the 10 immortal giants. As for you, you should stay. In the indifferent voice, the Master of the Heart Core didn't move, but Fu Huaiqin, who was far away, seemed to have suffered the most terrifying thing in the world. His mind suddenly collapsed, his soul collapsed, and even his body turned into dust that filled the sky. This scene caused Ling Xuanzi's eyes to widen. What kind of power is this? This is the power that transcends the immortal realm. As if seeing through Ling Xuanzi's thoughts, the Master of the Heart Core explained patiently. In the future, when you reach the eternal true world, with your talent and foundation, you won't have to worry about not being able to reach this threshold. Master, Ling Xuanzi suddenly choked up, and the softness in the deepest part of his heart was touched. In the past, his master often taught and guided him like this, but he seemed to have never listened to it. Clang! In the depths of the universe, the floating black, flying sword turned into a beam of light and was about to leave. The master of the heart core raised his head slightly, and his eyes were clear. The sword of judgment. The people of the Wong family are still as weak as before. They only dare to hide in the dark and attack. Without your protection, the assassins in the hidden void world who would resort to any means possible would not have survived until now. As he spoke, he stretched out his hand and seized the air. In the distance, the black flying sword let out a hum and struggled fiercely, as if it had been grabbed. Its wail echoed through the universe. Master of the heart core, you only have a will left. Do you really want to break off relations with the Wong family? A cold shout rang out from the depths of the universe. If one looked closely, they would see an illusory gray figure standing there. It was as blurry as light, but its mighty presence covered the entire universe. I've been waiting for eternity. The heir I've been waiting for has come to the eternal true world. It's time to put an end to the grudges of the past. As he sighed softly, the master of the heart core waved his sleeve, and the tower of endless end shone and disappeared. The next moment, a shrill scream that shook the heavens rang out from the depths of the universe. Then, scarlet blood splattered everywhere. There was no doubt that the great man from the strongest immortal clan had been killed by the Tower of Endless End. Only the Sword of Judgment had taken the opportunity to disappear. Master, the treasure has escaped, Ling Xuanzi shouted. This treasure was born from the Dark Order. If my real body was here, I would have been able to subdue it. But with the power of the will imprinted in the Tower of Endless End, I'm still not strong enough. The master of the heart core's voice was casual. But it doesn't matter. This time, I just need to take you away. When he finished speaking, he reached out, and the 3,000 floating sinks fell into his palm. Then, with a flick of his wrist, silver divine light filled the sky and swept towards different areas of the universe. Go! A loud shout resounded from the shadows, and then a figure that was bathed in peerlessly dazzling divine light charged out from the darkness like a ray of light with the intention of fleeing. But it was still halfway there when it was enveloped by the bright silver light of the Tao. No matter how it struggled, it was useless, and it was instantly incinerated by the silver divine radiance. When looked at from afar, it seemed as easy as killing an insect. But this scene caused Ling Xuanzi's heart to shake, and he was dazzled. That person was clearly a terrifying existence at the immortal realm, and it was even more formidable than Qi Kanghun and Qi Tianlin. However, it was utterly unable to resist a single attack from his master. Moreover, this was merely the strength of his master's will. Rumble. The universe roiled as the silver divine radiance swept out like a boundless river of stars. Every now and then, immortal figures would charge out, but they were enveloped by the silver divine radiance and completely obliterated before they could even get there. For a time, countless shrill cries resounded and shook the universe. On the other hand, only now did Ling Xuanzi suddenly notice that numerous immortal existences have been hiding in this universe since a long time ago, and he'd actually not noticed them at all. He couldn't help but be shocked by this, and he didn't dare imagine how severe the consequences would be if these immortal existences attacked together when he sent his junior brother away. Perhaps they think that great figure from the Wong clan alone is sufficient to kill me. Ling Xuanzi's expression flickered indeterminately. After a short while, the universe finally recovered its silence, and only the smell of blood suffused the air and couldn't be dispersed in a short period of time. It's time for us to leave as well. As he spoke, the core master held the Horsetail Whisk in one hand and the Tower of Ceaseless in the other, and he brought Ling Xuanzi's soul core with him as he walked towards the distance. Master, are you really not worried about little junior brother? Ling Xuanzi couldn't help but ask. It's useless even if he's worried. This tribulation must be dealt with by him himself. The so-called rebirth is rebirth amidst destruction and transcendence between life and death. Once you start to comprehend the Tao of destiny in the future, you'll understand the cause and effect within it. As he spoke, he brought Ling Xuanzi further and further away. Master, where do you want to take me? To the eternal true world, of course. If I'm not wrong, your senior and junior brothers should have already departed from the sixth heaven and headed to the seventh heaven. At that time, Ruosu will naturally tell you about the matter that the master and disciple of Mount Innerheart have been plotting for countless years. Master, so all of this was within your expectations? I don't have such great ability. Otherwise, I wouldn't have been unable to find out whether my main body is dead or alive all these years. Their conversation was still reverberating in the air when the master and disciple's figures had already vanished into the depths of the boundless universe. P.S. More updates and sent over. Chapter 2664. The universe was a scene of ruin. Many big stars had already collapsed and dissipated, and a faint smell of blood permeated the void. In Chaotian City, absolute silence, deathly stillness. Countless cultivators were shocked, and their eyes were in a trance. Since the opening of the gods' secret realm, the events that happened in it had affected the mind of every cultivator in the city. It was also not long ago that people heard that in the Battle of the Gods' Relic, the forces of the four eastern royal clans from the seventh heaven were almost defeated by Lin Sun alone. Then, the rumor about Lin Sun caused a great sensation in the city like a great wave. In the battle of defending the arena, he killed Nan Tianba, Nan Tianzhong, Nan Yongxiang, and the others, killing the powerhouses of the Nan clan. In the Great Hunt, Li Henshui and the other powerhouses of the Li clan were all killed by Lin Sun. And in the Ascendant stage, Lin Sun became the Chosen One, seized the primordial Dao tree, and killed Qi Lingyun, Zhong Li Xiao, Qi Pejuan, Lin Feng, Mu Yi, and other nobles from the eighth heaven. Every one of his achievements was so bloody that it made people's hearts tremble. The entire Chaotian city was in a great uproar. Everyone was talking about his name on the streets, in the tea houses, and in the pubs. No one thought that Lin Sun, a great emperor from the starry sky, ancient path, could actually kill everyone in the God's Relic, and no one dared to call themselves the emperor. But after the discussion, people all realized that after this incident, when Lin Sun walked out of the God's Relic, he would probably encounter a disaster. Sure enough, such a disaster happened. It was just that no one thought that this heaven-breaking catastrophe would end in such a way. First, the four immortals from the four eastern royal clans attacked, but they were all killed by Lin Sun's senior brother, Ling Xuanzi. Then, Qi Tianlin, Qi Kanghun, Mu Jiangshan, Dong Wang Kong, and Zhongli Ju from the eighth heaven appeared together, but they were all killed by Kong Ju, who suddenly regained consciousness later on. Ling Xuanzi, the successor of the core dimension, was about to be killed. However, as the master of the core dimensions will appeared, the calamity vanished and was completely wiped out. Those scenes seemed so world-shocking. Even though the curtains to the battle in the universe had already been drawn, the cultivators in Chaotian City were unable to recover from their shock for a long time. Since ancient times, when had such a shocking battle ever taken place in the great thousand-battle domain? Who had seen the terrifying scene of those undying beings falling like rain? And all of this was caused by Lin Sun. Who could have thought of this before? It was too unexpected. Mind Mountain. It turns out that Lin Sun is the successor of Mind Mountain. After a long time, someone sighed with emotion, breaking the deathly silence. Today's matter will probably cause a huge commotion in the eternal true world. After all, even the eighth heaven's 10 immortal giants have lost quite a number of great figures. No wonder Lin Sun is so unscrupulous and doesn't fear any big force at all. It turns out that he has something to rely on. We've all misjudged him. After this battle, if Lin Sun survives, his achievements in the future will probably reach unimaginable heights. The core dimension has reappeared, and chaos is about to rise. Chaotian City was in an uproar. Countless voices rang out, as if people were venting the shock that had been suppressed in their hearts for a long time. The entire city was in an uproar. It's good that he's alive. It's good that he's alive. Cyan Sparrow also heard the news, and her extremely tense heart completely relaxed. She didn't care about the successor of the core dimension. She only knew that as long as Lin Sun was alive, that was the best outcome. That's great. Lu Xiangque was extremely excited. He and Xiang Xiaoyuan had arrived at Chaotian City earlier and had been extremely nervous and anxious. It was only at this moment that he could finally relax. Uncle, just how powerful is Mind Mountain? Xiang Xiaoyuan's clear eyes rippled with extraordinary splendor. No one can say for sure. Perhaps only the giants of the eighth heaven know how powerful Mind Mountain is, Lu Xiangque said with emotion. Mind Mountain. After this battle, no one in the eternal world would dare to underestimate Mind Mountain anymore, right? In a tea house, Yin Lu from the Little Thunder Temple in the Great Lane world frowned at this moment. Before Lin Sun came out of the God Legion's secret realm, he had come to the conclusion that the Fong and Siyuan bloodline wouldn't die prematurely just like that. Everything that happened now proved that his conjecture was correct. But things were not as simple as he had expected. The reason was Lin Sun. Yin Lu did not expect that at the last moment, the willpower that belonged to the core dimension would only save Ling Xuanzi, and had no intention of interfering in Lin Sun's affairs. Variable. This lotus really corresponds to the number 50 great ways, 49 heavenly evolutions. If one of them escapes, who can see through it? At this moment, an indescribable admiration surged in Yin Lu's heart. He suddenly realized that it was precisely because of this variable, Lin Sun, that everything had become confusing and difficult to figure out. However, isn't your Fangcun Mountain worried that this lotus will wither away? Yin Lu was puzzled. Even if he tried to deduce it by force, he could not find any clues. In the cold and dark void, Lin Sun was carried by a force and flew forward uncontrollably. His heart was full of bitterness and anger, but also unspeakable hatred. Because of him, the fourth senior brother paid the price of his life to fight for a chance of survival for him. How could Lin Sun not hate him? The Fu family, the Wang family, the Qi family, the Qi family, the Zhong family, the Mu family. In his mind, recalling the previous scenes, Lin Sun's eyes were bloodshot, and his chest was filled with monstrous hatred. One day I will pay them back tenfold, 100-fold. At this moment, Lin Sun did not know that Ling Xuanzi was not dead, nor did he know that the willpower left by the core dimension in the Tower of Endless had taken Ling Xuanzi away. Otherwise, his emotions might not be so out of control. Boom! Suddenly, a terrible explosion sounded as if the sky was falling and the earth was sinking. In the void far away, a big hand suddenly stretched out and grabbed towards this side. The big hand was big enough to cover the sky. Its 5 fingers were like pillars supporting the sky, and the palm was surging with unpredictable Taoist light. Compared with it, the stars seemed extremely small. Bang! The force wrapped around Lin Sun exploded directly, and his whole body was shaken and flew backward, coughing up blood. He suddenly looked up and saw in the distance an old Taoist with a simple appearance walked out. His eyes were cold and terrible, and his body was surrounded by wisps of immortal Tao. It was Dishi, the evil god. Lin Sun's heart suddenly sank to the bottom. He did not expect that he would encounter such a terrible figure on the way to survival, which was exchanged by the fourth senior brother's life. You can't escape, and your senior brother can't save you again. Dishi, who looked like an old Taoist, walked in the void and almost came to Lin Sun in the blink of an eye. He stared at Lin Sun. In this damn place, no matter who comes, they can no longer change your fate of death. Lin Sun's body was stiff, and he immediately operated the abyssal sword cauldron, as if he was desperate to attack. Boom! The abyssal sword cauldron steamed with hundreds of millions of light, but before it could get close, it was flicked by Dishi's finger, and with a clang, it was sent flying. Under the impact, Lin Sun's blood was boiling, and he coughed up blood again. The difference in strength was so great that he almost had no power to resist. I was suppressed for 1,000,000 years in the last era, and I did not die because of it until the end of the era. Instead, I got a blessing in disguise and dug out a glimmer of life in the suppression. Even if I have not recovered my previous strength, it is still easy for me to kill a little thing like you. Dishy's eyes were cold and full of contempt. I'll give you a chance. Obediently hand over the jade plate of fate and the primordial Tao tree, and I will give you a chance to rely on me. Worship me as your master and be at my command. Every word was like a thunder, shaking the void. The pressure made Lin Sun almost stop breathing, and his body was severely suppressed, unable to move. But Lin Sun showed a sarcastic smile. I, Lin Sun, would rather die than worship an old thing who has been cuckolded as my master. Cuckolded. This word was like a knife that stabbed fiercely into the heart of the evil god Tishy, causing his old face to darken and his eyes to shoot out a terrifying light. You are really tired of living. He suddenly stretched out his hand and grabbed Lin Sun's throat. Then, the huge power of his spiritual awareness rushed into Lin Sun's body like a storm. Lin Sun's body was stiff, and a painful expression appeared on his face. The spiritual awareness was so overbearing and terrible that it broke his cultivation and directly rushed to the imperial life world, which could not be resisted at all. Sure enough, it's here. In an instant, Dishy noticed the primordial Tao tree rooted in Lin Sun's imperial life world, and his eyes suddenly became fiery. With this treasure and the power of the immortal Tao in the jade plate of fate, I don't have to worry about not being able to restore my previous cultivation. At that time, this era will also surrender to me. As Dishy said, his spiritual awareness surged and swept towards the primordial Tao tree, and he was about to uproot the tree. Suddenly, a dark, sharp light appeared, and it emitted a terrifying aura as it fiercely pierced the divine sense. Boom! The spiritual awareness was smashed and exploded. Dishy suddenly let out a painful groan, showing a look of shock and anger. Obviously, he was caught off guard by this sudden accident. At this time, a terrible power woke up from Lin Sun's imperial life world, like the eternal darkness waking up from silence. Dishy seemed to feel something was wrong. He immediately withdrew his hand from Lin Sun's neck and stayed far away. At the same time, in the endless rain of dark light, a graceful and slender figure walked out of Lin Sun's body. She wore a black robe with the brim of a hat covering her face. Strands of dark rain of light were like multicolored flowing rainbows that coiled around her delicate and graceful figure, causing her to seem like a god that had walked out from the darkness, mysterious and terrifying. Dishy's eyes narrowed slightly. A woman? At the same time, Lin Sun also opened his eyes wide. Chapter 2665. The dark light rain fell, and the slender figure was like a dream. She was still wearing a black robe, and the brim of the hat covered her face. Between her slender white fingers, she was holding a white bone spear with starlight flowing around it. Her aura was as quiet and mysterious as before. It was Xia Ji. Many years ago, back in the deity Phoenix realm, Xia Ji had fallen into extreme silence. At that time, she was worried that she was too weak and would become Lin Sun's burden. She couldn't tolerate this because she was never willing and could never tolerate standing behind Lin Sun and becoming a sheltered character. All these years, she had been sleeping in Lin Sun's imperial life realm. Just like what Lin Sun said, treasures could be destroyed, but only if Lin Sun died would his imperial life realm be destroyed. But Lin Sun didn't expect that the disaster he encountered today would wake Xia Ji up, making her walk out of her silence and appear in front of him again. An indescribable sense of guilt and anxiety surged in Lin Sun's heart, and he shouted almost immediately, "Go, go!" Dishy's power made even Ling Xuanzi, the fourth senior brother, afraid. This was definitely a terrifying existence that could threaten the immortal realm. If Xia Ji was implicated by him and lost her life here, Lin Sun didn't want to see that. Lin Sun, I'm different from before. Xia Ji stood in front of Lin Sun. Her slender figure didn't move at all, like a natural moat. Her clear voice floated in the air, revealing calmness and calmness. What's different? Do you know who he is? Lin Sun said decisively. As he spoke, he looked at Dishy Xia Shun. Let her go, and I'll give you the jade plate of fate and the primordial Tao tree. Otherwise, I promise I'll destroy these two treasures immediately. His expression was firm and ruthless. In Xia Zhi's world, only Lin Sun could stay. And in Lin Sun's heart, Xia Zhi's life was more important than anything in this world. What Jade played of fate, the primordial Tao tree. As long as Xia Zhi was alive, Lin Sun wouldn't frown even if he died now. Dishi Xiexin saw all this and said with a strange expression, "For a woman, is it worth it? Cut the crap. Do you agree or not?" Lin Sun's face was cold. He stepped forward and tried to protect Xia Zhi behind him. To his surprise, Xia Zhi put her spear horizontally in front of Lin, not allowing him to come forward. She said calmly, "The current you is no match for me. If you dare to step forward again, I will suppress you." Lin Sun widened his eyes and almost laughed out of anger. Was this girl crazy? How many years had he been cultivating? How dare he talk to him like this? She's right. Compared to you, she has a threatening aura that even I can't figure out. Otherwise, do you think I would just stand by and watch the two of you flirt right under my nose? Dishi Evil God looked at Lin Sun with eyes full of contempt. Lin Sun was stunned and looked at Xia Zhi again. After calming down, he found that Xia Zhi's breath was obscure, cold, and mysterious, which made him unable to see through her cultivation. This seemed very unusual. Could it be that in these years of silence, Summer Solstice's cultivation had reached a level that even he could not understand? It was incredible. Interesting. Your cultivation base clearly hasn't reached the immortal realm, but the power in your body makes me feel an invisible threat. Could it be that there's a taboo power hidden in your body that no one knows about? Dishi looked at Xia Zhi with a strange light flowing in his eyes, as if he wanted to see through the secrets of Xia Zhi's body and mind. Clang! Without hesitation, Xia Zhi waved her spear and stabbed it out. The spear with starlight flowing on it seemed to be able to penetrate the sky. It was swift and fierce. Wisps of immortal Tao emerged in front of Dishi and condensed into a sword to block this blow. Clang! The collision between the two was like a thunder, and the nearby starry sky suddenly set off violent, destructive waves. In the splashing turbulence, Xia Zhi's figure staggered back a few steps, but at the same time, she kept Lin Sun firmly behind her. "Oh, sure enough, your cultivation is not enough at all. I'd like to see what kind of power you have that can threaten me." Dishi stepped forward, his sleeves fluttered, and countless immortal Tao laws emerged, turning into bright, immortal swords. Every single sword strike was covered in unfathomable profundities, and it was formidable to an unprecedented extent. It was sufficient to cause even eternal figures to fear it. Lin Sun didn't doubt at all that if it was him, he wouldn't be able to block this sword at all. And all of this proved that what the fourth brother said at the beginning was right. The biggest threat is not the immortal beings of the 4 East Imperial clans, nor the immortal beings from the 8th heaven. It's the evil god Dishi. Clang! Xia Zhi's black robe fluttered, the spear in her hand surged, and in an instant, countless light shadows appeared like a circle of starlight torrent, covering the sky and the earth. This kind of power is far less powerful than Dishi Evil God, but Lin Sun keenly noticed that Xia Zhi's attack carried a trace of obscure and mysterious taboo aura. It was a mysterious power beyond imagination, like an unfathomable taboo, so that her attack was covered with a completely different layer of threat. Boom! This starry sky was tumbling. The tsunami-like battle torrents swept and spread, and the ancient stars were destroyed into powder in an instant, dissipating into nothingness. Lin Sun was sheltered behind Xia Zhi. Although he was not affected by the aftermath of the battle, just looking at it made him feel suffocated. Puff! In the smoke and dust, Xia Zhi's figure trembled slightly, and blood dripped from the corner of her mouth. Although she blocked this wave of killing, it was obvious that she was also affected and injured. This made Lin Sun's heart tighten. Is this the power of fate? At this moment, Dishi seemed to be greatly stimulated. His voice trembled, and his eyes were filled with uncontrollable burning desire. In his eyes, at this moment, Xia Ji was like a first-class, peerless treasure in the world. It made his Taoist heart uncontrollably produce a crazy desire to possess her. Huh? Lin Sun's black eyes narrowed slightly. Fate? Was the obscure and mysterious taboo power in Xia Ji's body related to the law of fate? Let's go. Xia Ji suddenly raised her hand, grabbed Lin Sun's arm, tore the sky, and moved away. Want to go? Impossible. At this moment, Dishi seemed to be crazy. He laughed up to the sky and waved his hand. Boom! In the distance, the starry sky tumbled, and countless immortal Tao laws as thick as chains emerged, condensing into a terrible territory, covering Xia Ji and Lin Sun. There was no way to retreat, no way to escape. With the J-plate of fate, the primordial Tao tree, and the power of fate, I won't worry about not being able to stand on the eternal world and break the barrier of the change of the era. In the laughter, Dishi appeared out of thin air. He was like an old Taoist, but at this moment his eyes were blazing and terrible. His whole body was bathed in the waterfall-like immortal Tao glory, and his power was so great that it shocked the starry sky. Boom! He stretched out his hand and grabbed. An unparalleled sword chi burst out from his fingertips, covering Xia Ji. Xia Ji seemed very calm from beginning to end, or in other words, since a long time ago, she didn't care about life and death at all, so why should she be afraid? In the face of this attack, an expanse of profound and mysterious light rose from her graceful and slender body, and it was faintly like a river of destiny was surging and flowing within it. Hiss! The spear that flowed with starlight flashed out like a violent storm, and it dealt with Dishi's attacks one by one. Every single strike was so profound and supreme, and it was filled with an inconceivable aura. Dishi wasn't shocked, but delighted instead, and his gaze grew even more blazing. He utilized his ultimate technique like an ancient evil god, and every single move he made rumbled with immortal light that surged through the heavens and the earth. He was too terrifying. Even if Xia Ji had utilized that taboo energy, it was still defeated and disintegrated by him one by one. It wasn't long before Xia Ji coughed up blood repeatedly during the battle. At this moment, Lin Sun finally noticed that Xia Ji's control of that taboo energy was obviously extremely lacking, and every time she utilized it, she had to pay an extremely great price. That was simply no different than harming her own cultivation. In the end, her fair and translucent skin cracked with strands of bloodstains. Obviously, she was enduring extremely great pressure, but she didn't take a step back. She kept standing there with a murderous, cold, and silent expression, and she seemed as if she didn't care at all that her injuries were becoming more and more serious. Lin Sun's pupils were bloodshot, and his chest was about to explode with hatred. Before, the fourth senior fellow apprentice would rather pay the price of his life to open a way for him to survive. Now Xia Ji was the same. This made Lin Sun's Taoist heart unstable, and it was filled with a kind of anger that was about to make him crazy. Little girl, this kind of power is not something you can control at all. You'd better leave it to me to keep it safe. Ha ha ha. As Dishi said, he held his hands in front of him, and a black sword chi was condensed between his 10 fingers. Boom! When this sword was just condensed, the starry sky fell into a collapsing scene of destruction, as if it couldn't bear the power of this sword. With Dishi's sword, the indescribable murderous spirit even reflected the terrible scene of doomsday and the collapse of all the heavens. Undoubtedly, this was the most powerful blow of Dishi, and he wanted to suppress Xia Ji in one fell swoop. As if she'd realized how terrifying this strike was, numerous dense and obscure shackles floated up into appearance on Xia Ji's graceful figure, and they were suffused with a mysterious and supreme aura that belonged to destiny, causing them to seem like the shackles of destiny. Her body was glowing, and blood was gurgling from the corners of her lips, as if she was burning her life. Bang! One of the chains suddenly broke and turned into a terrible taboo force, pouring into Xia Ji's spear, and then she stabbed it fiercely at the first time. Vaguely, The spear seemed to be entangled with the cause and effect of fate, like the spear of fate. Even if I die, I'll die with you. Lin Sun, who had long been filled with anger and hatred, also attacked desperately like a madman at this moment. In front of him, a vast expanse of white time suddenly burst out. Forbidden time, the taboo force imprinted with the mystery of time. At this moment, the whole starry sky suddenly fell silent. Time and fate met and collided at this moment, as if it was arranged by fate, producing an incredible scene. P.S. Continue to update tonight. Asking for monthly votes. Chapter 2666. Time flowed by while destiny was like a river that interweaved together. This expanse of the starry sky seemed to have fallen into a strange cycle of reincarnation, and everything revealed the scene of withering, falling into oblivion and being obliterated. Dish felt an expanse of whiteness appear before his eyes, and indescribable terror surged out from his body and mind. The energy of time and destiny was like a torrent that carried him into the unknown abyss of space and time. Light flowed before his eyes as numerous scenes appeared. They were everything he'd experienced in the past, the excitement and joy he felt when he stepped onto the path of cultivation, the joy and boldness he felt when he broke through every single time, the hardships and dangers he experienced when he attained the Tao, the joys and sorrows of the past, the enmity and blood enmity of the past, the friends and enemies that had passed away. Scene after scene flashed before his eyes, and then they withered, shattered, and vanished without a trace. When he saw a beautiful figure that was beautiful like a painting flash out, Dish felt suffocated, and he struggled desperately with the intention of grabbing onto her. However, this scene was mercilessly destroyed and vanished. No! Dish held his head as he cried out loudly, and his expression was filled with pain. That was the woman he loved the most. But right at this moment, he noticed that everything related to that woman seemed to have been erased from his memories. Her name, likes, nature, and even voice, appearance, and everything else was actually impossible to remember. In the end, his expression was filled with bewilderment, and the pain in his heart had vanished as well. It was as if everything from before hadn't existed at all. Those scenes were still appearing before his eyes, passing, withering, and dispersing. The terror in Dish's heart grew stronger and stronger instead. He'd already noticed that those scenes that had vanished were the experiences and memories that he originally possessed. Yet now, they were being deprived and destroyed by a terrifying force. Why? Dish struggled madly and howled like a wild beast. This was too terrifying. It was like he'd fallen into the abyss of space and time. Everything he possessed in the past and present had vanished from his body, and even his cultivation, lifespan, memories, wisdom, mind, and the grand Tao that he diligently pursued for countless years, they were ceaselessly dissipating. It seemed like countless years had passed, yet it also seemed like only an instant had passed. Everything before his eyes had vanished. It was still that expanse of the starry sky, cold, silent, and vast. Dish stood there staring blankly, and his expression was filled with bewilderment. Then he saw a man and a woman. The woman was dressed in a black robe and had a graceful figure. Even though the brim of her hat covered her face, she still gave off a soul-stirring and mysterious beauty. She was coughing up blood. The man gasped for breath, his face pale and translucent. His aura was weak, and his eyes were dim. At this moment, their gazes were locked onto him, causing him to feel extremely uncomfortable. He couldn't help but ask, "Who are you, and where is this place?" His voice was young and tender. How did he become like this? Summer Solstice stared at the evil god Tishi, who had turned into a child, and asked after a long time, "Isn't that even better?" Lin Sun took a deep breath and said in a hoarse voice with pleasure, "An old bastard has lost his memory, cultivation, and lifespan. He has been traced back to his childhood. I'm afraid he doesn't even know who we are now." His eyes were strange and filled with shock. If he wasn't wrong, then this was the unimaginable power produced by the fusion of the mysteries of time and destiny. It was like the torrent of fate that reversed the flow of time, stripped away one's cultivation and memories, and forced one into a state before one cultivated the Tao. This was no different from the taboo power. This reminded Lin Sun of the third stage talent of the Lord of Tong Tian, the Blade of Time. A long time ago, Luo Tong Tian had beaten Wei Mingzi back to his youth with this kind of talent, and his cultivation also fell to that of his youth. That kind of talent could reverse time and cut off one's cultivation. It was incredible. However, unlike the Blade of Time, the power Lin Sun and Xia Ji displayed just now not only reversed time and cut off Dishi's cultivation, but also deprived Dishi's memory, experience, and wisdom, making Dishi truly return to the time when he was a child without all the previous memories and experiences. Like a landscape painting with splashes of ink, all ink marks were completely erased, and Dishi became a piece of white paper again. This was undoubtedly related to the power of destiny. How could Lin Sun not be shocked by this? Time and destiny were grand Daos that were taken to be supreme taboos. It was said that only those who had a glimpse of eternity and understood the law of destiny could stand above all Tao, have insight into the flow of time, and understand the mystery of the rise and fall of an era. But now, his talent was related to the law of time, and Xia Ji's body was branded with the shackles of the law of fate. One time, one fate. At this critical moment of life and death, they helped them to defeat the evil god Dishi. All of this seemed incredible. It should be known that Tishi, who had killed many immortals, could not withstand the taboo power intertwined with time and destiny to defeat the powerful Tishi. Can you send me home? Tishi, who was like a child, felt fear and dread at this moment. He was about to cry. He was really no different from an ignorant child. Go home? Lin Sun stepped forward, rubbed Tishi's little head, and asked with a strange look in his eyes, Kid, let me ask you first, what's your name? Where do you live? My name is Gooden, and I live in the big locust tree village on the 7-mile slope, Tishi said timidly. Gooden? Lin Sun's lips twitched, and he almost couldn't help laughing. Tishi, who was such a powerful and terrible existence, was called Gooden when he was a child. Do you know who I am? Lin Sun asked. Tishi shook his head and mumbled, I don't know. Lin Sun explored his body with his spiritual awareness and found that it was indeed a pure child's body without any cultivation. If he wanted, he could kill him with a single thought. However, in the face of such a Tishi, Lin Sun couldn't be cruel to him. After all, he was a child who had been deprived of everything he had in the past. Gooden, when we leave, can I take you with me? Lin Sun said. Tishi was about to cry. I just want to go home. Big brother, please take me home. Lin Sun sighed his heart, waved his sleeve, put the child Tishi into the abyssal sword cauldron, and fell into a deep sleep. When I arrive at the eternal world, I will find a home for him. Lin Sun made a decision. At this moment, Summer Solstice's figure shook and seemed to be unable to support herself. Lin Sun's heart tightened, and he immediately stepped forward and held her in his arms. But his tentacles were stained with blood. Only then did Lin Sun notice that Summer Solstice's skin covered by the black robe had countless cracks like a spider's web, which had long been soaked with blood. Lifting the brim of her hat, Lin Sun's picturesque face was even more pale and bloodless, and there was still blood flowing from the corners of her lips. Summer Solstice. Lin Sun's heart trembled, and he felt a sharp pain. His face changed dramatically. I'm fine. I just broke a shackle in my body by force and got a little injured. Summer Solstice wiped the blood stains from the corners of her lips and said quietly. Her voice was still as clear and ethereal as the sounds of nature, but her clear eyes had long been gray. It was obvious that her desperate attack that seemed to have ignited her own body had actually caused her to suffer extremely serious injuries. How can you call this fine? Lin Sun's heart was filled with unspeakable guilt and pity. He held Summer Solstice tightly in his arms. It's my incompetence. Even though I've been cultivating for so long, I still can't protect you well by my side. His voice was low, full of deep self-blame. From his youth to the present, Summer Solstice had blocked many fatal attacks for him. But what about himself? Even if he had the cultivation of Zhu Xiong Emperor, he still seemed so weak. He even had to let Summer Solstice risk her life for him and get injured for him. All of this was like a knife stabbing into Lin Sun's heart, making his eyes red. Lin Sun, I did it willingly. Summer Solstice said seriously. For me, it's a matter of course. You don't do this again. She noticed that Lin Sun's state of mind was not right, which made her feel unspeakably uncomfortable. She didn't want Lin Sun to blame himself for her. She really didn't want to. It was a matter of course. You willingly? I can't do it. Lin Sun took a deep breath and gritted his teeth. Do you remember what I said in Nirvana? If we fight, let's fight together. If we die, let's die together. You can't act tough like you did today. Do you understand? Summer Solstice stared at Lin Sun for a moment, then lowered her head and said, Lin Sun took out many rare elixirs and handed them to Summer Solstice, saying, heal your wounds first. I'll protect you. It's useless. My wounds are related to the power of the shackles in my body. I can only resolve and heal them by myself. Summer Solstice said softly. Just eat them. Even if they can't heal your wounds, they won't hurt you. Lin Sun said grumpily. Summer Solstice took the elixirs and swallowed them one by one. She would obey Lin Sun's words. Seeing this, Lin Sun was relieved. He took out some elixirs and began to swallow them. Since he fled in the universe outside Chaotian City until now, he'd successively utilized the Forbidden Passage technique 3 times, causing his cultivation to be completely exhausted and weak to the extreme. Now that he relaxed, he couldn't take it anymore. In the starry sky, the two of them leaned against each other like fish in difficult times. They both felt unprecedentedly calm and secure. After going through all kinds of hardships and dangers, they could realize how hard it was to get this tranquility. After a long time, Lin Sun had recovered most of his cultivation. But what worried him was that although the cracks on Summer Solstice's body had healed, her breath was still extremely weak. Her eyes were dim, as if she had lost her spirit. There was a lingering gray color on her pale and beautiful face. Summer Solstice, let me have a look at your internal injuries. Lin Sun made a decision. He didn't believe that the Taoist injuries caused by the so-called shackles of fate couldn't be cured. As he said, his spiritual awareness swept into Summer Solstice's delicate body. More updates for you. Chapter 2667. As his divine awareness probed into her body, Lin Sun was keenly aware that there was an extremely obscure and mysterious power in the depths of her wounds. This mysterious power was extremely terrifying. It was like a series of chains hiding inside her body, firmly shackling her life essence. Lin Sun knew that this was the taboo power of fate. Fate was the most mysterious and obscure. It could bear the weight of the great Tao and promote cultivators to transform again and again. The essence of a living being's life was called numerology, which was also regarded as fate. The so-called fortune-telling was to infer numerology and survey the fate, so as to see the life path of this life. However, this fortune-telling technique was only useful for ordinary people. In the eyes of cultivators, the power of life was the most obscure and mysterious, just like the way of heaven. The transformation and breakthrough in the realm that cultivators diligently pursued were, in fact, the transformation and sublimation of their own lives. It was precisely because of these transformations that the lives of martial cultivators were filled with variables. It was almost impossible to deduce the fate of martial cultivators and determine their fate. In short, all the changes related to life could be called the way of fate. Now Lin Sun had long known that the way of fate, like the way of time, was the most mysterious and unfathomable supreme way in the world. But in Xia Zhi's body, the law of fate was like a shackle, covering her life source, which was undoubtedly incredible. Why does Xia Zhi have such a taboo power? And it's like a shackle, confining her life source. It doesn't seem to be an innate talent at all. Instead, it seems to be sealed in her body. Lin Sun's expression suddenly became uncertain. The origin of Xia Ji had always been a mystery. A long time ago, Lin Sun had explored many times trying to find some truth. But so far, he had found nothing. He only knew that it couldn't be a coincidence that Xia Ji appeared in Feiyun village and met him. Could it be that a powerful figure who can control the law of fate once usurped Xia Ji's fate? Lin Sun couldn't calm down. For the first time in these years, he noticed the abnormal situation in Xia Ji's body, which also made him unable to calm down. If someone really sealed the law of fate in Xia Ji's body, who was it? How terrifying the cultivation of a being who could control the law of fate should be. The more he thought about it, the more surprised he was. After a long time, Lin Sun got rid of distractions, calmed his mind, and continued to sense with his spiritual awareness. Soon, he made new discoveries. Xia Ji was indeed seriously injured, and her internal condition was extremely bad. But Lin Sun could sense that the law of fate, which was entangled in Xia Ji's life origin like a chain, was flowing into her limbs and bones at this moment. Her damaged body and serious injuries silently soaked in the nourishment of this life force, undergoing minute repairs. This discovery amazed Lin Sun, and he couldn't help but breathe a sigh of relief. Xia Ji didn't lie. Such a serious injury could be repaired and healed by herself without the help of external forces. Perhaps the energy of the laws of destiny that are like shackles is an inexhaustible treasury to her. It's capable of allowing her to cultivate in silence, and it's also capable of allowing her to undergo rebirth and transformation when she's heavily injured and on the verge of death. At this moment, Lin Sun vaguely understood. Over the years, summer solstice had fallen into silence many times. Every time she fell into silence, her combat power would achieve a transformation by leaps and bounds. All this was very likely related to the law of fate. Lin Sun didn't touch the shackle-like law of fate, which was so obscure and mysterious that he didn't dare to perceive it easily. Withdrawing his spiritual awareness, Lin Sun couldn't help asking, "Xia Ji, do you remember where you came from?" Xia Ji was silent for a moment and shook her head. "I've thought about it many times over the years, but I can't remember it anymore." After a pause, she continued, "I have a hunch that when I completely break and refine those shackles in my body, I'll be able to wake up to all the past things." Lin Sun nodded and said, "I also have a hunch that it's not a coincidence that we met. Your origin may be related to me, but no matter what, I will help you find the answer in the future." Xia Ji raised her clear eyes, looked at Lin Sun seriously, and said, "It doesn't matter. As long as you are by my side, it's enough." Lin Sun felt warm in his heart. He held Xia Ji tightly in his arms and said, "As long as you don't leave, no one in this world can take you away from me." A smile arose on the corners of Xia Ji's mouth, and her pale and beautiful face glowed with a different kind of expression, causing the starry sky to dim. But the next moment, her body stiffened, and she suddenly stood up from Lin Sun's arms. Looking at the starry sky in the distance, a pair of delicate crescent black eyebrows gradually wrinkled. "Lin Sun, it's time for us to go." Xia Ji got up and held the white-boned spear tightly in her palm. Her aura was cold and murderous. "Is there an enemy?" Lin Sun narrowed his eyes slightly. Xia Ji whispered, "It's an alien beast. Do you remember the world I entered after leaving the ancient Desolation territory?" Lin Sun thought for a moment and remembered that in the Sea of Stars in the ancient Desolation territory, Xia Ji had left alone and entered a mysterious portal that emerged in the sky. Later, he learned that the portal was located in the most dangerous place in the Dark World, the Last Days Impasse, also known as the Source of Disaster. Xia Ji had fought alone in that world for many years, and the enemy she killed was the alien beast that swept from the depths of the boundless starry sky. Lin Sun was no stranger to alien beasts. When he left Xiao Empire for the first time in his youth, he met an unimaginably huge alien beast in the star-shifting formation. In the following years, he met that alien beast again on his way from the ancient Desolation territory to the ancient way of the starry sky. In the nirvana of freedom, that alien beast attacked again and even mobilized countless alien beasts to attack Lin Sun together, which caused great danger and trouble to Lin Sun. In the end, it was the willpower of the owner of the square inch that killed the alien beast in one fell swoop. But Lin Sun didn't expect that in this completely strange, starry sky, such an alien beast would chase after him again. Let's go. Summer Solstice immediately took action and moved forward. Lin Sun couldn't help but ask, Xia Ji, you've fought against these alien beasts for many years. Do you know who sent them? Years ago, I heard Chen Linkong talking to a man named Golden Cicada. They said that these alien beasts came from the eternal world, Xia Ji said casually. And a long time ago, my intuition told me that they came for you. You fought in the last day's impasse to help me stop them? Lin Sun was shocked. Xia Ji nodded. For a moment, Lin Sun was in a complicated mood. It turned out that Xia Ji had been fighting for him since he was in the ancient desolation territory. But which part of the eternal world did those alien beasts come from? Could it be the Luo family? Impossible. How could an immortal emperor who controlled the 8th rank of the earth rank control so many terrifying alien beasts? If they came for him, what did they want? Lin Sun had all kinds of doubts. Vaguely, he realized that it might have something to do with his talent and the heaven-accessing place. That was the only way to explain it. Rumble. While they were moving, a muffled tremor came from the distant starry sky. It was as if a great army was charging towards them from the depths of the universe. Lin Sun and Xia Ji were just about to change their direction when a rumble that sounded like muffled thunder came from the depths of the starry sky in all directions. For a time, the vast starry sky seemed to be in turmoil. A ruthless, cold, and terrifying aura surged over from different parts of the starry sky like a tide. They could vaguely see the silhouettes of gigantic black shadows emerging from the depths of the starry sky. They were like floating continents, and they were flying towards them. Shockingly, it was innumerable cosmos beasts. Every single one of them was enormous like a mountain and possessed violent and savage auras. Merely their scarlet red pupils were like the sun and moon, and they emanated a horrifying bloody glow. The aura of these guys is obviously different from before. Xia Ji acutely noticed that something was different. A long time ago, she had killed countless alien beasts. The alien beasts she had encountered at that time were not as powerful as the ones she saw today. They are indeed different. Although they are not in the Emperor realm, they are covered with a unique, ruthless aura. They are not inferior to those in the Emperor realm. Lin Sun spread out his divine sense and also felt the difference. He had fought side by side with Xia Ji on the Great Wall of Nirvana Heaven and killed countless alien beasts that rushed towards them. But compared to them, the alien beasts he had seen in the past were not as powerful as the ones he saw today. Lin Sun even noticed some extremely terrifying auras that were not inferior to those of the Emperor Ancestor realm in the world. This was simply too shocking. It should be known that the Emperor Ancestor realm was a first-class overlord in the eternal world. They were only second to the immortal realm. But there was an aura that was comparable to the Emperor Ancestor realm in this army of alien beasts, and they could even form such a huge army. If this happened in the eternal world, it would definitely be a disaster. And if such an army of alien beasts was sent here by someone, how shocking would the power of the person behind it be? As long as it is not the immortal realm, there's no need to worry. Let's go. Charge forward and kill our way through. Lin Sun did not dare to think too much and made his decision immediately. The abyssal sword cauldron flew up and shone with billions of rays of light, bathing him and Xia Ji in it. Then, the two of them turned into two swift rays of light and rushed towards the distant galaxy. This was an unfamiliar universe. Based on what his fourth senior brother, Ling Xuanzi, had said at that time, they would be able to reach the eternal true world through this path of survival. But Lin Sun did not know how to get there. But at this time, he could not care so much. He had to kill his way out of the encirclement. Chapter 2668. In the starry sky, blood splashed, and roars shook the sky. Puff, puff, puff. In the dense roar of fighting, huge bodies of alien beasts exploded from time to time. Blood splashed like rain and filled the sky. In the dense army of alien beasts, Lin Sun's abyssal sword cauldron floated above his head, flowing with hundreds of millions of rays of light, wrapping him and Xia Ji. They almost pushed all the way and opened a bloody road. Wherever they passed, there were broken corpses, splashing blood, and painful roars. These alien beasts were indeed more powerful and terrible than those he had seen before. The weakest one was comparable to an Emperor Realm practitioner, and some powerful ones were even not inferior to the Emperor Ancestor. Any Emperor Realm cultivator in this world would feel despair under such a siege. But to Lin Sun, no matter how many of them there were, they were not a threat. With his current cultivation, he could even easily kill Juetian Emperor Ancestor, so it was as easy as tearing a painting to deal with ordinary Emperor Realm characters. What's more, although these alien beasts were comparable to the Emperor Realm, they were not real practitioners after all. They had no wisdom, only the instinct of killing. This made Lin Sun more relaxed in the battle. In less than a quarter of an hour, he broke out of the encirclement and flew far away in the starry sky. From beginning to end, he did not encounter any real threat. Whoosh! However, soon after Lin Sun got out of trouble, a strange cyan streamer swept over from distance. Wherever it passed, the starry sky was torn open like a ravine. Looking at the cyan streamer, it was a cyan bone saber with a unique shape like a crescent, and its blade was flowing with frightening cold light. Lin Sun's pupils shrank, and he resisted with Abyssal Sword Cauldron. When the two collided, Abyssal Sword Cauldron was shaken away, whining constantly. Puff! Being implicated, Lin Sun coughed up a mouthful of blood. The power of immortality. His face darkened, and he realized that the power of the cyan bone saber had exceeded the scope of the Emperor Realm. Whoosh! In a harsh whistling sound, the cyan light splashed, and the bone saber chopped again, as fast as lightning, full of unpredictable killing intent. Lin Sun's spirit was burning, and he exhausted all his strength to resist. Clang! Clang! Dang! The deafening sound of collision resounded. Although every blow was blocked by the Abyssal Sword Cauldron, Lin Sun's chi was disordered under the impact of the terrifying power. He coughed up blood repeatedly, and his face turned pale. This wasn't something normal, undying beings could compare to. It wasn't any weaker than Dongwang Kong and Qi Kanghan. The most terrible thing was that Lin Sun hadn't seen the person who used the cyan bone saber until now. A strong sense of crisis came to Lin Sun's mind. Let me. Xia Ji suddenly made her move, and the white bone spear that was flowing with starlight pierced out. With a clang, the cyan bone saber, which had injured Lin Sun heavily, was shattered and exploded in the void at this moment. But Lin Sun noticed that Xia Ji, who was already seriously injured, was bleeding from her lips again, which made his heart tighten. He shouted, "Don't use the power in your body anymore." Xia Ji didn't care. She grabbed Lin's arm and moved forward quickly. Boom! Suddenly, a black Rui descended and smashed down fiercely. Xia Ji didn't dodge, and he swept the white bone spear in his hand out. The black Rui was shattered again, and it turned into a rain of light in the void. In the starry sky, far away, a light and bewildered voice resounded. Lin Sun didn't care about this. He only saw that Xia Ji's body started to crack and bleed again, which made him furious. Is there no end to it? He roared, and his voice shook the starry sky. His hair was disheveled, and his expression became ferocious. Since leaving the God's Relic until now, Qi Tianlin, Qi Kanghan, and the other three undying beings had joined hands to kill them. When they finally killed them, the Wang family, the number one undying being, came with the Sword of Judgment. He caused Marshal Uncle Kong Ju to be seriously injured, and even fourth senior brother had to pay with his life to open a way for him. But all of this wasn't over. In this strange starry sky, evil God Dish had schemed and caused him and Xia Ji to be seriously injured, and then defeated him completely. After a short period of peace, the army of alien beasts covered the sky and the earth. Until now, he didn't even know who the enemy was. Only a cyan bone saber and a black rui made him and Xia Ji fall into a dangerous situation again. All of this seemed to be endless, and the killing intent came one after another. How could Lin Sun not be angry, hateful, and crazy? What answered Lin Sun was a golden divine seal, which appeared out of thin air like a dazzling sun and pressed down fiercely. Boom! It was still Xia Ji who smashed the golden divine seal, but her injuries became more and more unbearable. Her body was soaked in blood and seemed to be about to fall apart. But at the same time, a slender silver hairpin suddenly appeared and fiercely stabbed towards Summer Solstice's back. This scene made Lin Sun's eyes bleed. The unprecedented anger stimulated him like lava, and his whole body seemed to be burning. He rushed out desperately. Puff! The silver hairpin pierced through his back, bringing with it boiling hot blood. Xia Ji suddenly looked back and saw such a scene. For a moment, she was stunned, as if she couldn't believe it and couldn't accept it. Lin Sun looked down at the bloody hole in his chest, and then raised his head and said in a hoarse voice, "Xia Ji, go. Go." His consciousness became blurred. The power contained within the silver hairpin was too terrifying. Not only did it penetrate his body, but it also wreaked havoc within his body, destroying his vitality. "I will kill them all." A cold voice full of endless hatred echoed in Lin Sun's vague consciousness. He was shocked and tried to wake himself up. Then he saw a scene that he would never forget. A series of obscure and mysterious shackles emerged from Xia Ji's graceful figure, surging out at this moment like the long river of fate. "Ah!" She raised her head and let out a voice full of endless grief and anger. Then, the dazzling white flame suddenly spread like a storm. The vast starry sky, the endless void, and the vast stars all collapsed, withered, sank, and died at this moment. It was like a universe was about to collapse and perish. And Xia Ji's figure became the source of destruction. At this moment, she was so sad and angry, as if she wanted to destroy everything in front of her. "No!" A shrill cry resounded, and a figure hiding in the shadows was swept by the white flames. In an instant, the figure vanished into thin air as if his fate had been taken away. Following that, similar screams rang out incessantly. Lin Sun saw immortal divine light rising and trying to escape from this starry sky, but it was swallowed up by the white flame in a flash and disappeared. He saw a man in a splendid robe, who was like a god, struggling in the white flame with a face full of fear, and disappeared in a flash. However, these scenes began to become blurred. Boundless pain surged into Lin Sun's consciousness, making everything in front of him fall into darkness. Vaguely, anxious and hesitant voices rang out, but they gradually became blurred and ethereal. In the end, all perception disappeared. In a universe that seemed to be in destruction, a graceful figure drenched in blood, carrying a person on her back, charged forward like a madman, unceasingly charging forward. Along the way, the blood dripping from her body was mottled like petals. Gradually, their figures disappeared. Nobody knew how long it had been. In Lin Sun's consciousness that fell into darkness, a clear voice full of anxiety and worry rang out. Lin Sun, you can't die. You promised me that you wouldn't leave me alone like this. Have you forgotten that without you, my world will fall into darkness again?" The clear voice seemed to be repeating and exhorting him. The voice was clearly in front of him, but no matter how hard Lin Sun tried, he couldn't wake up, let alone open his eyes. It was like being bound by layers of shackles. Then, his consciousness became blurred again. Nobody knew how long it had been. All of a sudden, in Lin Sun's dark consciousness, broken pictures emerged and flew around him constantly. Every picture was fragmented. Only the anxious call was so clear. Grief, helplessness, and sadness constantly impacted Lin Sun's consciousness like a tide. Suddenly, he He bit the tip of his tongue hard with unknown strength. That dark consciousness finally concentrated a lot, and he was finally able to see many scenes from those fragmented pictures. A blood-stained, broken girl was running in the boundless starry sky while carrying a person on her back. She kept running as if she would never feel tired. Her breath was obviously extremely weak, as if she would fall down at any time, but she kept holding on with unknown strength. On her pale and translucent face, there were even beads of tears silently rolling down her cheeks. Along the way, she didn't know how many times she cried, but she didn't make any sound, as if she was afraid of disturbing the person on her back. Only the anxious and sorrowful words kept repeating in her mouth, many of which were vague and couldn't be heard clearly. In the end, there was only a murmur calling his name, Lin Sun. Lin Sun. Those scenes and the sorrowful murmur made Lin Sun's chest feel blocked by something, and his heart felt a sharp pain as if it was pricked by needles. Did you hear that? If you don't wake up, I really can't hold on anymore. At this time, Lin Sun heard a murmur full of exhaustion, powerlessness, and sorrow, almost in a trance, in his consciousness. For a moment, Lin Sun seemed to be hit by something. His dark consciousness shook violently, and his whole body began to tremble slightly. Then he opened his eyes. When he saw the pale, transparent, and beautiful face lying on one side, he couldn't help but shed tears. P.S. A new plot will start tomorrow. Name, Above the Eternity, I Reign. Chapter 2669. The candlelight flickered, and by the light and shadow, it could be seen that this was a simple stone house. Xia Ji was still wearing the blood-stained robe. Her slender figure was curled up, lying on the edge of the bed. Her beautiful little face was pale and transparent. Between his brows, there was a dark and gloomy aura that couldn't be wiped away. Lin Sun, who opened his eyes, couldn't help stretching out his palm and rubbing Xia Ji's hair. Xia Ji, I'm not dead. Don't be sad. He wanted to smile, but tears flowed down his cheeks involuntarily. The scenes that floated into appearance within his consciousness seemed to be reflected once more before his eyes. In the boundless universe, she who was covered in blood was running by herself while carrying him on her back. She was so heavily injured, yet she didn't care at all, and she just ceaselessly called out to him while tears silently flowed down from her beautiful face. This was the first time that Lin Sun saw Xia Ji cry, so sad, helpless, and hesitant. This was also the first time that Lin Sun couldn't stop crying. Who said that a man doesn't cry easily? After experiencing the most heart-wrenching hardships and dangers, perhaps only then would one understand how important the people one cared about the most were in one's heart. Xia Ji, who was lying on the edge of the bed, was stunned at this moment. She raised her head and stared at Lin Sun, who opened his eyes. After a long time, she said softly, Lin Sun, don't scare me like this next time. Her clear voice was choked with sobs. She seemed to squeeze out a smile, but there were tears in her eyes, falling silently. Perhaps she was too excited, or perhaps she had accumulated too much worry and sorrow in her heart these days. Xia Ji, who had always been quiet, stretched out her arms and hugged Lin Sun tightly. She rested her head on Lin Sun's chest without saying a word, but her delicate body was trembling slightly. Lin Sun gently stroked Xia Ji's hair and said, It's okay. I won't let such a thing happen again. In the end, there was a touch of determination in his voice. Elder sister, the medicine is ready. Suddenly, a timid voice came from outside the stone house. Lin Sun's turbulent emotions were immediately suppressed, and he calmed down. Little Shi, come in. Xia Ji propped herself up and said softly. The door of the stone house was pushed open, and a petite figure walked in. This was a little girl who was no more than 10 years old. She was wearing a tanned animal skin coat, and her long black hair fluttered in the wind. Her little face was young and beautiful, and her big eyes were full of life. She held a porcelain bowl in her hands. It was steaming hot and filled with the smell of medicine. When she saw Lin Sun, the little girl was stunned for a moment, and then a look of surprise appeared on her face. She said, Sister, this big brother has finally woken up. Xia Ji grunted, took the porcelain bowl in her hand, and said, "Xiaoxi, thank you." Little she revealed her snow-white teeth and smiled. "Elder sister, my grandfather said that you and big brother are honored guests of the village, so we must treat you well. There's no need to thank me." Lin couldn't help feeling strange. A distinguished guest from the village? Ji handed the porcelain bowl to Lin Sun's mouth and said, "This is the decoction made by Xiaoxi's grandpa. He said it's good for replenishing vitality. In the past 3 months, Xiaoxi has sent the decoction every day." 3 months? Lin Sun was even more puzzled in his heart, but he didn't ask any more questions. He drank the soup in the bowl and tasted it, and he couldn't help but nod in his heart. This soup was obviously brewed from some very old divine herbs. Perhaps it couldn't be said to be precious and rare, but it could still play a role. When Lin Sun finished drinking, Ji handed the porcelain bowl to Xiaoxi. Before Lin Sun said anything, Xiaoxi had already turned around and left with a smile. "I'm going to tell the good news to my grandpa." The petite figure pushed the door open and left. "Where are we?" Ji shook her head. "I don't know." It turned out that 3 months ago, Ji carried Lin Sun on her back and entered a space-time tunnel after leaving the dilapidated and strange starry sky. When they appeared again, they came to a vast mountain. The village where they were now was located in the depths of this mountain. Xiaoxi's grandpa was the village head. 3 months ago, when he was collecting spiritual medicine in the mountain, he was attacked by a fierce beast and was saved by Ji, who passed by. Xiaoxi's grandpa was grateful for Ji's kindness and invited her to visit the village. In order to save Lin Sun as soon as possible, Ji immediately agreed. Knowing this, Lin Sun understood why he and Ji became the distinguished guests of this village. It's a little similar to when I was in Feiyun village. Lin Sun sighed with emotion in his eyes. When he was young, he was also regarded as a distinguished guest by the villagers of Feiyun village and temporarily lived in the village. It was also there that he met Ji. Ji said, "I haven't forgotten what happened in those years. It's because of those things that I chose to stay here. Besides, I can feel that they mean no harm to us." Lin Sun nodded and began to sense his body. Whether this village was in the eternal world or not, the most important thing was to recover and control his power. Before long, Lin Sun couldn't help but smile bitterly. The condition of his body was more than bad. It was so serious that his qi was in disorder, his meridians were damaged, and his spiritual power was dried up. Even his body was severely injured. In addition, his imperial life realm also showed signs of damage, as if it had been ravaged by a storm. There were signs of chaos everywhere, no vitality, and the atmosphere was lifeless. In this state, he was no different from a cripple. Any random person could kill him. Fortunately, the abyssal sword cauldron and all the treasures were still there. Otherwise, the loss would be great. I must hurry to recover. Otherwise, if I encounter any danger again, I'm afraid I won't be able to resist at all. Lin Sun felt a strong sense of crisis. A series of footsteps sounded outside the stone house, followed by a deep voice. "Miss, I heard that the little brother has woken up." Ji opened the door and welcomed an old man. He looked old, but his body was strong. His skin was bronze, and his whole body was full of vigor. His eyebrows were full of vicissitudes and fortitude. Lin Sun could tell at a glance that this old man was a quasi-emperor. It was just a village in the wilderness, but the village chief had such a cultivation, which was enough to prove that this world was absolutely extraordinary. The old man also saw Lin Sun, who had woken up. He couldn't help laughing heartily and said, "Great, now I can rest assured." As he spoke, he introduced himself as Wu Chuan, the village chief of Cloud Shadow Village. His ancestors had lived here for generations. Lin Sun also told him his Taoist name. He didn't tell him his real name, not because he was cautious, but because he was worried that his existence would cause trouble for this remote village. After all, if this world was really in the eternal world, then Lin Sun's name would definitely be known by everyone. After chatting for a while, Wu Chuan warned, "Miss and little brother Dao Yuan, feel free to stay here. It won't be too late to decide whether to leave after your injuries are healed. Right after Wu Chuan left, Xia Ji, who had been standing by Lin Sun's side, swayed slightly. As if she had lost all her strength, she silently fell to the ground and fainted. Xia Ji. Lin Sun's heart tightened. He did not know where he got the strength from, but he struggled up from the bed and staggered to Xia Ji's side. With all his strength, he picked her up and placed her on the bed. At that moment, Lin Sun's forehead was covered in cold sweat, and he was shivering all over. After panting for a moment, Lin Sun noticed that Xia Ji was still alive. However, perhaps because she had exhausted all her strength during this period of time, she had fainted. Upon closer inspection, Lin Sun found that there were still many fine cracks and scars on Xia Ji's body. Her face was also pale and translucent. Her physical condition was not much better than his. Lin Sun did not dare to imagine how Xia Ji had managed to persevere until now. Now you just need to recuperate. I'll take care of you. Lin Sun grabbed Xia Ji's fair and cool hand. His eyes were filled with great pity, and his heart ached for her. After a long time, Lin Sun sat down cross-legged on the ground with great difficulty and began to meditate. However, his injuries were so severe that he could not even use the abyssal sword cauldron and the treasures, nor could he take out the rare elixirs hidden in the treasures. Lin Sun did not care about this. He calmly operated the profound meaning of the Great Way Furnace scripture, inhaling and exhaling, and silently guided and sorted out the disordered qi that was on the verge of collapse. Gradually, wisps of spiritual qi gathered from the void and poured into Lin Sun's body. Although it was only a drop in the bucket, this tiny improvement had given Lin Sun hope. Time passed day by day. Lin Sun and Xia Ji stayed in the Cloud Shadow Village in the depths of the mountains. It seemed to be isolated from the world, and there were no more disturbances or disputes. Every day, Brooke would bring the decocted medicine to Lin Sun, who was in a coma, and Lin Sun took the medicine that could replenish Xia Ji's vitality. Unfortunately, Xia Ji's condition did not improve, and she was still in a coma. This made Lin Sun even more cautious, and he almost spent all his time on cultivation. Until half a month later, Lin Sun finally accumulated enough power to operate the abyssal sword cauldron. Without hesitation, he took out some rare elixirs and elixirs hidden in it. Destruction and nirvana coexist in the Great Way. Without destruction, there can be no construction. Then I will take this opportunity to remold my cultivation and temper my Taoist foundation with the Great Way Furnace scripture. Taking a deep breath, Lin Sun's eyes showed a touch of firmness. His injuries were very bad. His soul, body, and cultivation were all seriously damaged. For others, it was no different from being disabled. But for Lin Sun, who had many experiences in remolding his cultivation, it was an opportunity to recultivate himself. After taking out a longan-like green elixir and swallowing it, the gentle medicine turned into a strong tide of heat and rushed into Lin Sun's limbs and bones. His body, which had long been dried up and weak, was like a good rain after a long drought, greedily and crazily absorbed the miraculous and surging medicinal power. Lin Sun closed his eyes tightly, and his body and mind were empty. He was immersed in meditation with a solemn and tranquil look.